Please respond. Mr. Sturtevant?
Here.
Ms. Gray? Mr. Bourne?
Here.
Mrs. Taylor? Mrs. Harris Muhammad? Dr. Jones? Mrs. Pinckney Epps? Mrs. Larson? Mr. Coleman?
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay, colleagues, just want for you all to just have your thoughts. Our colleague, Ms. Larson, had a fall on the ice and had a pretty severe injury to her elbow, and that's why she's not here tonight. Is anyone in need of interpretive services?
Si alguien necesita intérprete en español, por favor, levante su mano.
Thank you. Mr. Bourne. Well, I need you 1 second, sir. I know what you're up to, but quickly, right quick. Madam Clerk?
We have two amendments to the agenda this evening. One is to add receive for action budget transfers, and we want to move item 4.01 to follow item 4.08. Need a motion if there are no other changes.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The amended agenda has been approved as amended. The next item is item 2, public information. We did not have any speakers who signed up in advance. What is your pleasure?
Is there anyone who would like to speak to the board tonight? If you will line up to my right. Anyone? Okay, once again, if there's anyone who would like to speak to the board tonight, they would join our line over here to the right. Individuals, 3 minutes. Group, 5.
My name is Tom Hartman. I'm speaking this evening as an individual. I want to start by thanking you profusely for the event here this afternoon. I think it's a huge step forward. At some point, I think it probably took some real courage on someone's part, and thank you so much. I'm wearing red and blue and teacher red. Do they match? Of course they do. If we choose to see them that way, we will work this out. Although the biggest elephants on the loose right now are MLK and Dr. Bedden's decision, we must not let other elephants slip through holes in the fence in the meantime. My focus this evening is, again, the possibility of 5 additional hours per week for instructional staff with no compensation. Surely this elephant cannot be allowed to fly or even walk. It is unthinkable to add to employee work hours for no compensation. That instructional employees are on salary rather than hourly wage is a technicality. A technicality cannot be used to cover a moral lapse. The idea that salaried workers can be told to work whatever hours the employer tells them to work just because they are on salary, this is a distortion of employment ethics and right-to-work laws. The public may well be confused. The proposed 8-hour workday adds up to a 40-hour work week. How can people complain about a 40-hour work week? What this overlooks is that the clock-in to clock-out work hours only begin to cover the hours teachers must actually work. Teachers these days have an enormous amount of paperwork to do, parent contact to do, and meetings to attend. Especially at the elementary level, teachers can do practically none of this work during the hours students are present. By law, teachers must get some planning time during the day, but increasingly this law is being ignored for the sake of more meetings. I ask you, if a minister spends 3 hours a week on the pulpit, does that mean he has a 3-hour work week? If a lawyer spends 20 hours a week in court and with face-to-faces with clients, does that mean she has a 20-hour work week? Putting ever additional squeeze on instructional staff may produce short-term results, although I doubt it. But longer term, who will come to teach enrichment? Who will stay? Longer year, longer day, more requirements, more possibility of being reconstituted.
Time.
Why would you come? I have a longer version of my remarks to pass out.
Let the record reflect we've been joined by Mrs. Taylor and Mrs. Pinckney.
Good evening, School Board Chairman Mr. Coleman, Superintendent Bed, and all other members of the school board. My name is Charlotte Hare, and I'm president of the Richmond Education Association. Today is March the 2nd, 2015, which is the EDA's Read Across America Day, and this year the classic book we're focusing on is Oh, the Places You'll Go. So here is some of my modification of Dr. Seuss's story. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your way. And now you know what you know, and you are the one who'll decide where to go. Oh, the places we can go. Oh, the places we will go. Let's go to the Book of Wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to think and act using knowledge, experience, understanding, common sense, and insight. In short, wisdom is a disposition to find the truth coupled with an optimum judgment as to what action should be taken in order to deliver the correct outcome. Now let's go to the Book of Trust. Trust is confidence in or reliance on. Do we all share mutual trust? Trust in each other means confidence in each other and relying on each other. Now let's go to the Book of Truth, a pledge of loyalty or faith, that which is real. Can we speak the truth? REA is known for raising questions. REA is known for raising the hard questions. REA is known for giving you terms to look at, reflect upon, and question why you do what you do. So tonight I ask you, in the words of Dr. Seuss, you're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your way. You know what you know, and you are the one who can decide where to go. Oh, the places we can go. Oh, the places we will go. We must remember that what you say and how we treat people is important, but how we make each other feel will remain in our memories far longer than what you know. None of us are perfect, but striving to improve each day should be our mantra each and every day. Taking care of each other, taking care of your employees. Oh, the places we will go. Oh, all the places we can go.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board tonight?
Mr. Chair, members of the school board, I'm going to try to be brief. I had a whole list of comments that I wanted to make about the apology. My name is Charles Willis. I had a lot that I wrote down about how I wanted to talk about or bring the issues about the apology that was issued today in this building before the community and those parents and students that were affected 2 years ago. However, I got an opportunity to briefly speak with some of the administration, got a chance to speak with Dr. Baden, and got a chance to listen. So, although I don't have a change of heart, I do have a change of part of my comments. I do want to share with you that, however, I applaud the spirit of collaboration and bringing together and bridging the gaps between the barriers of Hispanics and Blacks. Given the fact that the incident did take place 2 years ago, earlier I didn't feel that it was warranted that an apology was needed, especially when it was shared with me that the procedures that took place was within policy, and that because of the awareness that the tragedy may have taken place or that there was a policy being broken, or that breached safety and security here at Huguenot, that I felt that the principal and staff were doing what they had to do. However, we feel that after getting several calls concerning this matter, there are a lot of folks that have expressed the interest of whether or not we open the doors that may lead to other areas. Areas such as, are we going to apologize to the family of the young man that was left in the classroom for a few hours over at George Mason? Or are we going to openly apologize and hold an assembly for the young preschooler that was left on the school bus and then wound up walking the neighborhood in 20 degrees weather? Are we going to apologize for other issues such as the abrupt closing of Elcott because of the mold situation, which we know mold don't go overnight? However, there's a need for the school to close, and I applaud that. However, there was a lot of discomfort between staff and community, some changing the work schedules and others. My concern here is that we are not to reopen doors. They need not to be open just for a few political gainage of some individuals or community pressure,
30 seconds.
especially when superintendent and others are doing their job. I say in closing that when the principal and his or her staff has to do what they have to do to maintain the safety and the ability of our student staff and visitors, then I stand to applaud those that do the job. And I look forward to more collaboration again. I want to thank you so much. And Dr. Baden, thank you you said that you would implement some of those things recommended by the task force. I heard today that many of them are being implemented. And that's all we ever wanted. Thank you so much for the job well done.
Okay, at this point, is there anyone else who would like to address the board? So we're going to close the line. Okay, thank you very much.
Let the record reflect you've been joined by Dr. Jones.
Good evening. My name is Kaisha King, and I'm speaking as an individual. I wanted to first start off by saying that public speaking is not something that's my cup of tea. But last week, I had a chance to actually see some students come forth, and one student stuck out the most. He walked up to the podium, he stated his name, and he said, "Thank you." And as I sat in the back, all I could think about is how he was brave enough to come to the front to even state his name. And so I needed to come up here to support my colleagues at MLK. I am a teacher at the East End School, and so my students are affected. And when I was at that meeting, I had the opportunity to see fellow students that I actually taught. So that was a joy to actually see students standing up for what they believe in. And so as I stand before the board, I just would like to put this question into you guys' mind. Do you believe in dreams? Can they really come true? Because if that's the case, we cannot shoot students' dreams down because they're dreaming with their teachers and for their teachers. And I just wanted to say, I know this is a tough seat to sit in, but we have feelings, and it's a lot that goes into what we think when we get home from work. And just being around our family and being able to vent there, it's just so much that goes on. So every decision that's made here, it affects millions of people. And I would like to say thank you. Have a good night.
Hello, my name is Melissa Gray. I'm with the John B. Carey PTA. We had a fantastic time with Dr. Seuss today, and we were very blessed to have Mamie Taylor and Parker came, and the mayor blessed us with his presence. Dr. Bedley came. Sorry, I know you're not specific.
Officer, he just came in, so I'm allowed now.
And my always flag is to go ahead and close open enrollment, so we stop this imbalance. I'm gonna fly that flag until I die, until I see it happen. I want to see the playing field actually level. I'd like to see fully funded, and I know that that's not y'all's decision per se, but I think that there's a noogie hole that I could teach you. That just get the money, and bring it down to the people, because since 1968, and I'll say it again, 1968, they started underfunding these schools so that they could choke out the poor people and my darker friends. And I have watched open enrollment tear apart the community. That needs to stop. The resentment needs to stop. And you're talking about, I was listening what the last young lady was saying, because we're dealing with a level of confidence in themselves as children, as people, as their self-worth. You know, do they see, you know, even third grade, fourth grade, they understand that lots of money is being spent on stadiums and things for entertainment purposes, and they know that they're not getting what they deserve. You know, we want to talk about being a tier 1 city, but we're not going to give them fully fund the schools. That's ludicrous. You can't expect kids. And you know, it's amazing. Like, we work with what we have. We got a 2001 computer system. It's got Windows 2. You know, we don't have Wi-Fi, but like, I think maybe one room, and barely that. One room in that building. And I know if certain people had their way, some people that aren't here, would love to have seen that bulldozed over and had either a Target put on it or some really nice condos that would be selling for that $1.5 million per, so we can get in those higher tier people. But honestly, 99% of us don't live like that. And the unimportance of our children has been resentfully built up since 1968. And I carry this now. I carry this. And my child carries this. And I'm not going to be one of those people, again, I'm not going out to the county. You're stuck with me. You're stuck with me and my other old punk rock friends that don't want to leave Richmond. We love it so much. And honestly, I love my friends. I love the architecture, blah, blah, blah. I live within stone's throw of the BMFA. It's great. The families are what drive me right now. I don't see the ancestors of enslaved people. I see survivors. And the fact that the city of Richmond systematically pulls my children down. They're not just my neighbor's kids anymore, they're my kids. And I feel bad for people who take their kids to Fox and take them out of Cary. They're missing out. Where are they going to learn how to do do the awesome dances we do over there? Where are they going to learn to get along with people if everyone just gets to decide where, oh, it's so much better over here. Why is it better? Because we have parents there. And open enrollment. Stop it. Stop it. Chesterfield, they give 40% of their budget.
30 seconds.
Let's follow suit. Let's say, you know what? Give us the money. Bring it down to the children. Watch what we can do then. Watch us. We're ready. Give us the money. Pay my teachers so they're not so Title I driven. Get us off the Title I funds. Fairfax doesn't do it anymore.
Time.
I love you all.
Winfrey, citizen, Richmond, as well as Chesterfield County. I actually came down to Red Creek because at this point in this junction, I feel that we, board, the citizens of Richmond, we really need to grow. But before I do that, if I permit to, the question that I want to pose is, what about the children? And the reason I raised that question that I posed is, what about the children? The reason that I asked that question is because personally, with the years of experience that I've had working with youth and working with children, Richmond has some of the best children in the world. I think the educational system that we have now has a lot of work to be done to renovate and to rectify some of the issues and problems that we have. For an example, it just doesn't make sense to me, baby. I don't understand. We already have codes for our schools. It doesn't make sense to me. Just help me out. If I'm walking around with beats on my head and going to the classroom, and I take my cell phone out and I plug it up in the socket so that it will stay charged, that I'm not supposed to have out anyhow, and it goes on. Or I'm walking down the hall with plugs in my ears, and I expect for you to learn like the other kids are doing who really don't have it. And if it takes 15 minutes to 20 minutes sometime, just to say, put up the cell phone. Then you have the rest of the time to try to get instruction and to try to deal with disciplinary problems. And we still expect our children to fare as well as some of the children in the county.
30 seconds.
That was fast. We have issues with violence in the school, but we have no violence prevention program, none. But we expect the children to conform without giving them the assistance and the aid that they need. Well, I don't have time to pray, not publicly, but privately I will. And if we expect the children to conform, then there's some things that we need to do within the framework of the school board that would not show that there is a dichotomy within the board itself. And it's so obvious, but y'all have a blessing.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I received a message from someone who got here before 6:30, but after you close the line, are you
Okay.
willing to allow
Yeah,
us
we
to
still
come
got a
forward?
few.
Okay. I don't see
Who is that person?
Kirsten Gray.
Hello, I'm Kirsten Gray, and I'm speaking for Alliance for Progressive Values and as a parent of 2 Richmond Public School kids. I would like to thank the school board and administration for taking a hard look at later start times for teens and for holding numerous public forums for us to voice concerns and support. Science, implementation in various districts nationwide, and research have all shown good results academically, physically, and psychologically for students. I hope to see board vote yes to later start times for teens. On a different note, on the possibility of Dr. Bedden being hired in Boston, I'm afraid our campaign to keep Dr. Bedden RPS may have helped him in being possibly selected as a new superintendent in Boston. In the off chance he is not hired, I'd like to see a renewed commitment to Richmond Public School so we continue to support our administration with enthusiasm and trust. Thank you.
Okay. Based on our agenda, is there anyone else who would like to speak to the board tonight? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
if I
sir.
might. I know it's not typical protocol for us to speak about a topic that may not have been mentioned in public information, but I do want to, if I might, unless there's any objection, just have a point of personal privilege. I think it should not be lost on anyone here the significance of the apology that took place today. Whether you agree or disagree with the tactic, the importance of that, the symbolism of that to not only the community but the students who we try to help comport themselves with decency and honor and respect and being mature enough to say I'm sorry if they've done something wrong or someone has felt like they have been wrong. So I just want to publicly commend Dr. Bedden and his administration, Mr. Baraka, for having that event, apologizing. Whether it's 1 year later, 2 years later, to me the important thing is that we acknowledge that some things may and probably should have been done differently and were probably done wrong. The significance is not lost on me, nor do I think it's been lost on the majority of the community members who follow Richmond Public Schools, who know that this is yet another indication of the idea, the notion that this is a different day in Richmond Public Schools, where 2 years ago we started as a board, prior to Dr. Bedden, not running from the problems, not hiding from the poor results on tests. We address those challenges head on, we acknowledge them, we don't rationalize them, we don't offer excuses. We just roll up our sleeves and try and get to work on fixing the problems. So Dr. Bedden, Mr. Baraka, my hat's off for you for doing that, for acknowledging what was a very, very contentious situation and working over the last year to 18 months to really start to address some of those issues and those challenges that we have. Because I think this is an important example of not hiding. And to those who ask whether we should apologize to the parents of the boy that was left on the bus or in the classroom, if I'm not mistaken, we have done that. And if we need to do it again, we'll do it again, because all of those examples are inexcusable. And as someone who came from a home where someone struggled with addiction, there was no way that you can ever get to recovery without first acknowledging you have a problem. And so we have done that, we continue to do that, and my hope is that we will always do that. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, before we go to the next item, I did neglect to introduce our student this evening, or announce that we had a student. Dr. Payton, would you like to introduce our student?
I'm going to try this, and if I get it wrong, I won't be offended if you correct me. Michael Stelton is a junior at Open High School. Michael's a junior at Open High School, where he's very enthusiastic about school and works hard consistently. This year, Michael is a junior class president. He also helped raise over $400 for his class last semester. Every year since his freshman year, Michael's represented his family and Open High School student his family and Open High School student representative governor. Michael volunteers at Retreat Hospital in the emergency room after school and on weekends. During his sophomore year, he volunteered over 80 hours for the governor's campaign. While volunteering for the campaign, Michael started a high school volunteer group, which included 22 Open High School students. This summer, he is scheduled to attend Congress of Future Science and Technology Leaders at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome, Michael. Let's give this young man a hand. Madam Clerk.
The next item is item 3, academic improvement. 3.01 is to receive a presentation on the anti-poverty initiative on promise scholarships and early childhood education.
Good evening, Dr. Bedden, members of the board, Mr. Coleman. I'm Thad Williamson, Director of the Mayor's Office of Community Development, City of Richmond. While I get this set up, this is the sequel to the special school board meeting that the mayor convened last summer, as you recall. And at that time, we had a discussion about the intersections between the city's comprehensive poverty reduction initiative and education, with education being one of the top 5 priorities coming out of the Mayor's Anti-Poverty Commission and a subsequent report. And we, at that time, invited you to participate with the city and other stakeholders in 2 task forces, one focused on early childhood education and one looking at the possibility for a promise scholarship program for Richmond to intentionally connect our high school completers to quality post-secondary educational opportunities. And I'm pleased to report that we had outstanding collaboration from RPS board. I'm very sorry Ms. Larson is not here. She was a terrific assistance, as was Ms. Harris Muhammad, and various members of the RPS administration and from the wider community, some of whom are in the audience. So simply, I want to summarize our findings in both areas and our recommended next steps. This is more for the benefit of a refresher, maybe for the audience. Multiple measures document clearly that we have overwhelming early childhood needs in the city of Richmond. We have twice as many students almost as the state average coming to kindergarten, not prepared to learn. A survey, one of the most impressive of its kind, done this summer in Creighton Court, speaking to over 300 households, documented that the vast majority of children under 5 are not enrolled in an early childhood education program. And parents reported lack of quality child care is one of the major obstacles to employment. This task force, as I mentioned, brought together many people, and simply highlights this again, some of the partners there, including from the state. Smart Beginnings United Way also played a key role in various foundations. And we looked at some really hard problems in terms of gaps in service, gaps in quality, lack of coordination and ongoing communication between the various providers in the space. And what we realized is that, A, we need to develop a coordinated, integrated plan that is thoughtful, and that connects all the dots between what happens to a baby, what happens to a 2-year-old, what happens to a 3- and 4-year-old, and how it all needs to align to make children ready to learn in RPS, and also to assure that the parents have access to affordable quality childcare wherever they live so they can get to work. But we also quickly realized that we don't have the vehicle in place to actually make that happen. So the primary recommendation I'm sharing with you is a proposal to create an institutionalized entity linking the key program providers, decision makers within the city and RPS, and then extending out into the larger community so that we can have the pieces in place to have a proper plan. So we're calling this, and this is still proposed, we're under serious discussion, but I think there are a few more dots need to be filled in and so forth. Sorry for mixed metaphor, but co-convening the DCAO, be co-convened by the DCAO of Human Services, who is the official within the City of Richmond, responsibility for all human services, including the early childhood providers, and the equivalent position within RPS, Associate Superintendent of Academic Services. And this cabinet would be working with the key program providers and policymakers from both the school side and the city side to sit down and regularly talk, and not just talk, but talk with a point. We need a system of shared data. We need to agree on common metrics of evaluation. We need to set quality control standards and norms for what excellent programming for our children looks like. We need to plan community outreach. We need to identify ways we can collaborate together, and not least, we need to advocate for resources from all levels. In partnership with the Early Childhood Cabinet, it is proposed we form an Early Childhood Action Council that would bring in a larger group of stakeholders, including state government, foundations, the colleges and universities, elected officials, the housing authority, and others who would be the outward face of this work and help us in creating community-wide standards and helping to lay the basis for an integrated plan. So we're in discussions about this. If all goes well, we can start doing this fairly soon. But we wanted to come to you so you know what this is and know about the collaboration that we're planning. And basically keeping at the table everyone who has come together with the Early Childhood Task Force and beginning the actual work. I should say, in addition to this, the task force also made a series of recommendations to city government, which I have submitted to the city administration for funding of human services needs. But frankly, the need is so overwhelming that the city alone is never going to be able to do it. And that's why we really need to get our act together to having this integrated plan to help us make a strong case to other sources for more funds. One upcoming project, this is an example I'm going to share with you of the collaboration we hope will come out of this working together, is with some of the poverty reduction money for this year. Richmond Public Library is partnering with Richmond RPS to do a Books at Home project. RVA Reads actually going to begin this month with the distribution of books in the major pre-K centers within RPS and with the associated educational materials aimed at the children and the parents. And this is going to be one book a month for the rest of the academic year. And this is a starting point. Obviously, we'd like to be able to do this again next year and to learn from what we do. Move on. Actually, let's spend more of the time on the common scholarship piece because this is slightly more involved. Okay. So, if you look at individuals' lives and what impacts the direction they take, clearly what happens in the period between 18 and 24 is huge. And some members of our community have a lot of investments made in them, and some have very few investments made in them. This is a major source of inequality. And so it makes sense strategically from a poverty reduction point of view to focus on that, about how do we make sure that the kids, as they're preparing to leave high school, get all the information and support they need to make wise choices about their future, define their aims, and to go for them. It's also well documented that post-secondary schooling, each level of achievement reach has a very large impact on your likely lifetime earnings. And so the city has a terrific mix of academic institutions, post-secondary academic institutions, universities, and community colleges. Far too many of our students do not realize or believe these are for them as well. And this is well borne out by the data. Obviously, we have a lower completion rate in the state by a significant margin, but even among that group of those who complete, a lower percentage are going on to a college, a 2-year, 4-year, or a technical training situation. The line right at the very bottom, in some ways, is the most alarming. The number of our students who report they have no plans is triple that of the statewide average. If we fix this, or we start to fix this, the impact would be large. So if our graduates attended college or equivalent educational experience at the same rate as the state level, that would be about 175 more kids per year going on. And if we got the high school graduation rate and the college going rate at the same level, you're talking about almost 400 kids a year, which is a huge impact, given that we're talking usually about overall cohort of 600 students. So these are big gaps, and they're profoundly consequential for the reproduction of poverty in our city. So that is why we were attracted to the idea of looking at a promise scholarship type program for the city of Richmond. This has been done in numerous cities. It used to be just a few, now there are over 60 are involved in one way or another, with 3 major goals. One, provide opportunities for low-income families to attend and succeed college or technical career opportunities. Second, strengthen the college and career going culture within the schools and help improve school quality. And thirdly, increase the attractiveness of the school district and city relative to surrounding districts and private schools. So these are 3 big systemic goals. So the work of the task force was to start thinking through how do we get from here to there. What would that look like? Again, we had a wide variety of partners at the table, including all the local universities, the State Council Higher Education from Virginia, who was in the audience, the foundations, community organizations, as well as, of course, RPS in the city. And we did really 4 different things in this work. First is we looked at what do students need while they're in high school in terms of preparation and support. And I'm going to be elaborating this a little bit, but the primary recommendation was to create a future center within each of the comprehensive high schools as a coordinated space staffed by full-time professionals devoted full-time to connecting students starting in 9th grade to conversations about college and career. The second recommendation was looking at, okay, how do we support students once they get there? If you've been following President Obama's very interesting proposal for community college tuition, some of the discussion has been we have to look at not just getting students to college, but helping them succeed. And obviously, dropping out of college, not being able to make it, not being able to complete their goals is highly correlated with poverty and related challenges. So the recommendation here is to develop a learning module, if you will, in partnership with J. Sargent Reynolds Community College, working with a cohort of 20 to 30 recent RPS graduates enrolled in that college to provide intensive life coaching, academic support, other kinds of social support to allow the students to be as successful as possible. And hopefully learn a great deal from that about what is needed for our students to be successful in making that transition to college. The third question on the table was, going forward with this, where does this live institutionally? And the recommendation is to work with the Richmond Public Schools Education Foundation to have them serve as a fiscal and operational agent and have a governance structure that's shared between RPS, the City of Richmond, and the foundation as the primary partners. As I shared this afternoon, if the donor comes in with a very large amount of money, then we will adjust. And the last piece is that the foundation contracted with the Upjohn Institute, which is a very respected workforce development think tank based in Michigan that is sort of the industry leader in researching promise scholarship programs and their impact. And they did a technical study for us as well as a site visit and made some recommendations on where they thought Richmond should go. And I just want to share with you some of the results of the technical study. We asked them to look at a variety of possible program models, because there are a wide variety of program types. Some scholarship programs nationally focus just on two-year colleges, some focus on a wide spectrum of colleges, some are just public, some are public and private. And what this shows here is in effect, the price tag for guaranteeing community college tuition, net of federal aid and other sources of support, plus $5,000 living stipend is estimated to be about $2 million a year, rising over time. If we made it a bit more expansive and included the 2- and 4-year schools, you'd be looking about $5 million a year. And if you went, the most ambitious plan would be if you pay for the full cost of college, then you're talking a commitment of $20 to $40 million a year. And that's probably not realistic in the immediate future, but we put it out there because that's what the experts told us. And clearly, the larger program we have, the greater impact it's going to make on systemic goals that I mentioned at the beginning. But I think it's very important to recognize that even the lowest cost option on the table, you can predict to make a significant impact on our students, especially our low-income students. And so having worked through this with us, some of the task force at the Institute recommended that we spend the next 2 years laying the groundwork for a full-fledged program by investing in teacher centers and beginning at a minimum with the community college scholarship to begin in 2017, but still maintaining on the goal of that larger program to include 2-year and 4-year institutions. So we took this to heart, and the task force basically recommended, rather than commit to a specific program design now, lay the groundwork, do a period of fundraising, and see down the road what's going to be realistic for Richmond. Okay, so here's a specific strategy. It's being proposed that the city of Richmond will invest from city funds, not part of the school budget, but from city funds coming out of the Poverty Reduction Initiative in laying infrastructure for what we call RBA Future, including future centers, each of the high schools, comprehensive high schools, each staffed by a full-time professional, a college coach embedded at J. Sergeant Reynolds, a program director, a development team, and also a technical career specialist who will be working system-wide. The funding would be provided to RPS Education Foundation, acting as a fiscal agent for the program. And as I just said, we would be aiming to define the exact parameters of the scholarship program based on the scale of fundraising we're able to achieve. But certainly with the goal of implementing the program for the class of 2017. Okay. So I've said a few things about feature centers. This is not abstract. We're not creating this out of thin air. This has been done other places, most notably in Lynchburg, Virginia. We took 2 site visits in the task force, including members of the RPS administration, to see their model and how it works. What we do in Richmond may not be exactly the same because every school is different. But in Lynchburg, as a precursor to raising money for scholarships, they established these in both of their high schools, and they got immediate results in terms of the number of students applying and actually attending college. Okay. And some of the activities that would go on there, as I mentioned, you have a full-time professional site coordinator, a plan to meet with each student every year, guiding the students and families through college application process, standardized tests, financial aid, connecting students and families to area, statewide institutions of higher education, community outreach, and also providing hands-on guidance to those students who want to pursue a technical career option. And just an example, this is data provided by Bridging RPA. We have our specialty high schools at the highest levels in the region of students who are, percentage of students who are completing the federal financial aid forms. Thomas Jefferson is in the middle, but the other 4 high schools are in the bottom 6 in terms of the region public high schools. And this is not to sort of say shame on you or anything like that. This is to say this is an identifiable problem that this strategy can help correct. If we do this, we can expect some tangible improvements over the next 2 years. Okay. So, plan next steps. Okay. As this goes forward, the first thing that would be essential to do is conduct a site-specific needs assessment at each high school. As I said, every high school is different. The space needs may be different. We know there is a variety of existing community organizations, career coaches, and others doing related work in high schools already. We want to build on that, draw all those folks in, and build overall capacity. Certainly there will need to be a formalized memorandum of understanding between the foundation and RPS as with any program operating within the school building. Again, Lynchburg can provide some language and models to help us do that. Begin the process of hiring a program director, begin fundraising, and propose rebranding the entire initiative RVA Future. I should say, as part of that, to reiterate, it's envisioned that this is going to move forward completely collaboratively, a shared governance structure. We're not going to come into school buildings without the principals knowing what's going on, without them having a large say over the personnel in that building, without RPS having a large role in the hiring of the program director. That's all well understood. At the same time, as the money is being provided by the city, there will be provisions in the grant contract that the foundation would sign specifying on what the program is. But so we have a program concept, and I think we're very conscious that this will need a lot more work on crossing the T's and dotting the I's. To develop the specifics, but we're committed to moving this forward in the spirit of collaboration. The group that has been meeting since the task force completed its work in December to sort of push this forward includes Adele Johnson, Executive Director of the Foundation, who's in the audience, Sandra Wheeler, Community Partnerships Coordinator, myself, and also Dr. Barry, who has a PhD in education from VCU. And I'll finally sum up why should we do this, why should we do this now. Again, this is a strategy to reach young people at critical periods in their life, complements the existing efforts of guidance counselors in a way that should enhance capacity to make everyone's job easier and better, aligns with the goals of the academic improvement plan to raise quality, standards, outcomes, expectations for all students. Making this investment also gives the potential to leverage private donors who would be willing to possibly invest in RVA Future scholarships. And certainly we will be trumpeting this initiative and trying to get as much support as we can. And finally, I should say that the planning process has brought together the key stakeholders, I think, in a way that maybe has not happened, at least to my knowledge, in Richmond in some time, in terms of having the key players at the table. We know we don't know everything yet, but we do know enough to go forward. And I would hope that the board will be supportive of this, and will continue to move forward together in the spirit of collaboration on both these projects. So thank you very much, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I don't think that you've sent this material to us. Is it possible for you to forward that to the entire board?
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful. Great presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is item 4, board actions. Your new 4.01 is to receive for action the superintendent's estimate of needs for fiscal year 15 to 2016.
Mr. Chairman, board members, audience and colleagues, we sent some additional information this weekend. The General Assembly finished their work and finalizing the budget that's been sent to the governor. And they'll reconvene April 15th, and he will either approve or amend the budget from here, so it's not final yet, but it's in its near stages, and it ended up garnering us an additional $54,000 from the dollars that we had previously committed to reducing the gap that we currently have. The PDF file. To recap a little bit of the information we sent this weekend. Let's scroll up a little bit, Bill. No. To the middle of that page. Yeah, up a little more to that chart there. There we go. Okay, so this is recapping our poverty and where we stand relative to the state. It's showing that we rank second in the state in terms of total number of students, the total percentage of students, 77.9 in poverty using our last year's FY14, which is still valid for this year. So that we have 18,663 of our 23,957 students. 3 out of 4 students in poverty, basically. And you can see, I just ranked them there, the top 15 in the state by numbers of students in poverty, regardless of the percentage variances. And you can see that even though Chesterfield County has 59,000 students, 29% are in poverty, we have a little 1,000 more students almost than they do in poverty, and we're almost the same as Newport News, who has 29,000 kids and 63%. So percentage-wise, we're second ranked. Overall, we're 7th ranked in terms of absolute numbers of students. It's a significant number, and the point of the significance is that studies have shown that it takes 15 to 20% more to address education for students in poverty because of the resources required. And so one of the questions, if you can flip to the next page, Bill, is that I did a pro forma of what the cost per pupil would look like on this budget based on the estimate needs with the additional $28 million gap that we currently have, $28,205,100. That would move the city's share of the budget to $164.7 million, or $7,500 per pupil. That's the source of the funds that we have in total, or the prior year fund balance. Then the state sales tax of $24.5 million. The state SOQ and other funds, $108 million, or $4,900 per pupil. Other funds, other local fees and so forth, $5 million, or $235 per pupil. And then the federal funds. And this year we're also presenting to you for your approval on the front end of the process. In the past years, it's always been done on the end of the process before it goes over to the city. But this year we're putting it on the front end because technically we should be presenting the entire budget for approval, even though the only fund, local taxpayer funds, go into the general fund, but you are still responsible for it, and the city is required to appropriate. We can't spend any money that they don't appropriate. And we ultimately always request that appropriation. And the total budget of all funds is $369 million because we have Title I, 6B, special ed funding, and food service are predominantly what make up that federal category of $64 million. That's $2,959 per pupil. So so that shows you that of all funds, that's $16,900 per pupil. That's a hefty number by its own right. So is $13,000. But you can look at Arlington, who's near the top of the charts in the state. They're at $19,000 per pupil, and they spend 80% of their money. Of that $19,000 per pupil comes from their local tax funds. They're only getting 20% state and federal assistance. Yes. So the point of this is is it doable? Is it a reasonable number? And our composite index, our local wealth factor in the state is 0.4636. Well, notice what the percentage of the total budget is as a total if the entire amount was funded. It's 44.6%. Norfolk brags in their city budget that they doubled the amount of the required local effort. The state requires that you match the standards and quality money. It requires that you match the K-3 class size money. There are several things that are mandated that you have to minimally spend. So again, the standards of quality formula is a revenue sharing mechanism within the state. And the state ranks all 132 school divisions and assigns a wealth index to them. Chesterfield County is in the 0.34% range. They're poorer than us. Hard to imagine, but that's how it works out. It's based on the value of true values of real estate, 50%, 40% on the adjusted gross income of the community, and 10% on the sales tax that comes back to the community. That's what drives that 44.6% number for us. The fewer students you have to that formula is weighted 2/3 for pupils, 1/3 for population. The fewer pupils you have to spread your wealth over makes you look wealthier. Okay, so what's happening? Chesterfield has 59,000 kids to spread their wealth over. We have 23,000 kids to spread ours over. Hence, we're wealthier in the state's eyes. So nonetheless, that leaves us at that 44.6%. And 164 million. If you look in the city's budget book for this year, for FY15, they present the local appropriation of 159 million. So really, we're only asking for 7 million more, 5 million more. All right, and then what's in that budget? But the problem is that what's in the city's number of 159 million is that 24 million of state sales tax. So there's a 24 million gap in that respect. And if you look at the percentage of where we were in 2009, we're back to our analysis of coming back to 2009 because we have more students now, about 300 more than we had in 2009. We were 21% of the city's budget, our 134 million back then was 21% of the city's budget, and we are now about 17% of that budget. And that's a 400 total budget of it. Well, it's a 4% differential on the city's total local tax revenues of about $400 million a year. And maybe closer to a 5%, it depends on how you look at it. And it all adds back to about $20 million. So if you take a look at, if you were to say, keep us at that same percentage during that period of time, it comes back to this $20 million. The other point is, and my point about what I didn't finish about the required local effort from the state and the matching funds for the state is that number for Richmond is $85 million in this 16 projected budget based on what the governor and the General Assembly just passed. $85 million. So if you double that, that's $170 million. And where are we? 164 million. So in other words, that would put us in the same ballpark of funding as Norfolk Schools is providing for their system, relatively speaking. And so I only say that to say that if you take the national recognized number of 15 to 20% for addressing poverty, this doesn't even mention addressing an ELL population for English language learners or our special needs population, which we have almost twice as many as the rest of any other school division in the state. It doesn't even address that impact, which is significant. Just dealing with the poverty factor alone, if you take 20%, and take 20% of our current, not that number, but the current year's appropriation from the city, which is 136 million, guess what 20% of 136 million is? 27 million. Isn't that magic? Okay. It's not hocus pocus. It's fact is what it is. Okay, so I offer that only to give you context of understanding what it all means in the scheme of things. Because that's the tough job you have in terms of making those decisions. That's about the best job I can do of presenting it. And the other information, we provided to you answers to questions that were posed by board members in part about addressing the large variations of percentages that are in the budget from from various line items. We responded to those and showed you that a lot of it has to do with the $27 million increase that's in this budget. And we laid those out by all the major initiatives. It all comes back to that. So when you start with the foundation that we have, and if you believe in the, and also I'll put together another slide, just a page down if you on this bill. I'm only going to point out 2 slides or 3 here. We got 40 slides that I sent on building a budget to build a better school division page, about 3 or 4 pages more down. Yeah, 4 or 5 more pages down. Yeah, past all this. 4 or 5 more pages. Yeah, keep going. Keep going. Several more pages. Okay, several more. We're getting there. We go. Okay, page down. Page more down, 1 more. Okay, so these are the major categories by which you'll approve the budget. Up just a little bit. They're legislated by the state of Virginia, and all school divisions have to appropriate their funds or address their funds in these 9 major categories: instruction, administration, attendance and health, pupil transportation, operation and maintenance, school nutrition, facility services, which is mostly CIP. That's a whole separate budget to be approved separately. There's a little bit of money here that's in the operating budget that contributes to facility services. And then debt and fund transfers, technology, and a contingency category. And 75% of it's in instruction, 25% of it's in all those other categories. And I laid out in here in these 40 pages, page one more page down, please. And then within each of those categories, you have these kinds of expenses that you incur within each of those functional areas. Every one of those is going to have some salary and benefits. And there's the kinds of benefits. It's mostly Social Security, retirement, group life, health, disability, and other benefits. That's 81%, 81.4%. And then you have the stuff, the things that support the operation of each of those functions. That's 18.6%. So out of your entire budget of $380 million, 81% of it's in people. And so you cannot make much of an impact on this budget without affecting people. That's the reality of it. You have to decide what programs you're offering or not offering. And what I spent the rest of these slides preparing is showing you how we use the standards, the staffing standards. And I went through school by school, grade by grade, and divided staffing standards into the number of students we're forecasting next year into each school. And it drove within 5 people, using a formula, it came within 5 people of the number of teachers. Of the 2,000 teachers we have, it came within 5 of those. So all I'm saying there too is that if we want to impact dollars significantly, then we're talking about affecting programs. And with 75%, 81% of the budget being in people, and 75% of that being in instruction, that means we can't make a significant dent in this thing without affecting instruction. That's what it says. Because we could wipe out all of administration, all of transportation, all of operation and maintenance, and we're almost at $27 million, but not quite. So that's why we can't address the problem by just dealing with pieces like that. We got to look at it from a programmatic standpoint. So then those next 30 pages, 38 pages deal with that breakdown of each of the pieces, and then, if you will, Bill, about 40 more pages down, it says revenue and expenditure summary, and that's going to break down and give you all the funds in your document. It's called Fund Revenue and Expenditure Summary, all funds. Way past the, and I don't know that we necessarily need to bring that up. I guess it's at the end of this PowerPoint, so it's going to be 40 pages down. Yep, down. There you go, back up. Back up. Up a page. There we go. Up a page. Let's go back to revenue. Back a page. Well, let's leave it here. No. down, we gotta go to the all funds, back up a page, sorry, up a page. Up again, two pages up. There we go. So that's looking at just the general fund, which is where all the changes are, because all the other funds, the federal funds, the grants, the food service, are all self-sustaining. Their revenues balance their expenditures. So we're only dealing with the general fund in terms of having to balance the budget. And that's this $261 million of revenue we currently have, which is a change of a decrease of $1,100,000 over the current year's budget, mainly because we're reducing the use of fund balance, one-time money, from $3.8 million down to $1.5 million in this budget. And then we dropped 2.3 in one-time money, but we increased some state funds from the General Assembly budget for next year. So page down a couple more. Put page down 2, 3 more pages. Down. Page again, page some more. Page several down. And the entire budget, yeah, page down. So a couple more pages. There we go. Page down again. Let's go to the next one. Yep, right there. So that's the entire budget, all funds, all functions, and that includes, except for the governor's school, Maggie Walker, for which we are the fiscal agent, and the Mass Science Center. That's another $11 million, so it's a $381 million budget in total, and that's what's on the first 2 pages of that fund recap. Is $381 million, $332,100. So if you approve the budget, whatever the number is we end up with here tonight, then that's the number we'll ask you to approve to send forward all funds for the mayor and council's consideration. Again, of which the only components that they will address will be the general fund in terms of local funding dollars, but appropriated so that we can spend the money even in the self-sustaining funds for a grand total of $381,332,100. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Mrs. Muhammad.
I have a question, Mr. West Bay, on page 7. It has page 7 at the bottom. It's line item number 7 from the top. And just lost mine. Can you explain to me what that is? Will be moved to EXCED area new director? It's an amount of $149,000.
It's on page 7 of the detail.
It has, see, you have 2 different types of page numbers that I see. It has page, P-A-G-E, the word page, and then the number 7, line item 7 from the top.
New director. Right, that was a new, it's a new position would be a new position in FY16.
So,
and then again, that's salary and benefits.
my question is, what is EXE? I don't know what that is.
It was just
Okay.
a exceptional education.
Oh, okay. So, the next question that I have is the page directly above that. Superintendent recommends using these funds for communication. Then there's a line item, HR update of administrative procedures of $150,000. So I would like to know why we're moving that money to communication.
Because we have no funds from the communication plan that was presented to you all, so we reduced that amount by about $50,000. We took it somewhere else to give you funds to implement the communication plan that was presented.
Just directed the dollars to that.
So what is going to be the amount needed to implement all of the HR audit recommendations that the board received over the weekend?
We left 100,000.
You have 100 because part of that money also included money for recruitment, but the AIP already had money in it, in the AIP. So that's why I reduced that amount from, he put in a request for money to do the administrative procedures manual and enhance the recruitment dollars, but the AIP already had some money in it. So rather than adding something new to the budget, I redirected the money to give you a funding source for the communications plan.
So, and I'm not being rude, but the question was, what are the funds needed to upgrade according to the recommendations of the auditor in the HR department? I heard all of that, but what if it's more than $100,000?
We don't have a concrete figure now, so we had to put a line item to try to get it done. But we believe from software that SHRM and other organizations, that myself and Ms. Hunter are a member of, that you can do administrative procedure manuals upgrades within that allotment.
Okay.
The key is the manpower to actually get it done.
Mr. Westby, I want to thank you for taking the time to really kind of detail this information this way. A question that popped into my mind was with the academic improvement plan and the lead turnaround partners that we have at some of our schools. When I did a comparison of what we plan to do in the academic plan and to what the lead turnaround partners are saying that they're going to do, the question comes to mind, are we, the lead turnaround partners, is that funding coming with them for at least a year? Or are we paying for that?
Yes, that's school improvement grant money comes separate from our general fund money. So that's separate federal dollars that flow through from the feds to the state. And you're required to use a turnaround partner as part of that process. You don't have a choice in Virginia.
Okay.
Now, what we have had is a conversation with them about the academic plan, and they are aligning their work with the academic improvement plan. The other thing is, we have a challenge, and we put line item in here. When our schools get ready to exit, they cut the money off. And so that's the other challenge. So we have to build capacity with our own overall district academic plan and get them aligned with it. And then we've also put some, for lack of a better term, transition money to try to phase our schools rather than going cold turkey. Armstrong, I think, for instance, is on the bubble, lost their money because they made enough progress, and then we lost the initiative just like that because they cut off the money. And it doesn't cut off until like September, so you've already started the school year, and then you get the notice that they exited for certain status. You don't have any funds anymore.
Okay. So is there a way that, in doing that alignment with the lead turnaround partners and the academic improvement plan, that we can maybe spend our money on them first and let them go, and then be able to use more money in the academic improvement plan? So I guess my question is, can we ask for less money in the academic improvement plan as far as people if we've got the lead turnaround partner coming in to provide those services at least for the first year?
The risk that you're running is that you only get certain number of schools that got lead turnaround partners. What about every other school in the district? The academic improvement plan is about every school in the district. So that's the risk you run in trying to do that. Does that make sense? That makes sense. It's just hard to roll those dice, I guess.
Hey, just one quick comment. All of this has already been posted, and I've double checked on our website for anybody who's asking for it. Folks were asking me about it. Two quick questions. You have our projected enrollment at 21,845. Is that including pre-K?
It does not.
It does not.
Pre-K, and we don't get paid state funds on those, except for the VPI program, and that's already included.
Is Head Start included in this federal loan?
It is.
It is. So actually, if we included the numbers of Head Start students,
We'd be at 23,000 some students if we counted all of them, but for the purposes here, we're only talking about the funded number of students for the state level.
So I'm just looking at the per pupil cost would go down though, if we included.
Oh, it would.
It would be a lot less than the 16,000 number here, right?
That's true.
Probably around 13 or something.
And that's true.
Okay.
That's a good point. I probably did, because actually the state starts including pre-K in the per pupil number now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just looking at the map. The other thing I had a quick question about is the CAFR report. I know the city is having a problem getting their CAFR report, and we're tied in with their financial system.
We are. Well, no, we're not in their financial system, but we are dependent on them for reconciliations of our cash accounts and so forth that they do fund for our bank accounts and so forth. And we are, we've completed our portion of the CAFR. We're still in some reconciling phases with them on the parts that we're dependent upon.
But we're not able to get ours completed until the city has theirs, correct?
We could probably submit it a little bit sooner once we get some reconciling pieces done. That still remains to be done yet. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have those parts resolved. Every other component of it's completed at this point.
So our end is covered. We've met all the state mandates and everything.
And we're a component unit of the city from a CAFR perspective, so we're not even really required to submit a separate CAFR. We do and always have, and we've also got the GFO, the Government Finance Office Association Annual Certificate of Excellence for reporting, and we'll continue to do that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Taylor.
Hello again, Mr. Westman. Included in this budget is the discretionary funds for the individual school board members included.
It is.
Is it the same as it was allotted last year?
Same for this year.
Around what area would I be able to find that?
It'd be in the administration, attendance, and health category. But in the board function, if we were looking at the breakdown of the PowerPoint about building a budget, it would be on page 32 of in the lower right corner.
Page 32, Bill?
Of the PowerPoint.
Page 32 of the PowerPoint?
No, I'm sorry. Not that, of the PDF file you have up. Yeah. You were in the right document, the other one. Right. And then page up one. That school board, right now, we gotta go down to the other, page 32 of that, that's about.
Page 48.
Okay, 48 of the PDF file. Page 48. You're on 34.
Type in 48.
There we go. Board services, in the legal and contract services, supply of materials, 150,000 are in those funds right there.
Thank you.
Mr. Westbay, what is the projected enrollment if you include all students? It's like 23,500, something like that?
Right. Very close to that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question. I'll make this quick. Mr. Westbay, I just want to say thank you to you and your team, Dr. Bedden, and the rest of the folks that put this budget together. This has been comprehensive, transparent, and professional. And it certainly makes our budget decisions a little more easy to digest and to think through. And I think the one thing that we have going forward as we, as a board, advocate for the needs that we have is the presentations that you've given, the information that you provided. It's all measurable, it's all able to be tracked and identified to a specific improvement component of the plan, which is one of the things that I think is going to be very beneficial to council as they consider what their commitment level will be. They can see exactly what they're paying for, which has been one of the knocks in years past, which is we don't know what we're paying for, we don't know what we're investing in, and now we have a plan, both on the capital side and on the academic side, that they can see what exactly it is they're paying for and investing in, and then we also have the ability to track that and measure it. So hats off to you and the budget team. I know you've put in countless hours, and it's been a pleasant experience, as if a budget experience can be pleasant. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we adopt the superintendent's statement of needs and forward on to the mayor and city council.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Sturdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern with the budget as put forward and as being put forward for a vote tonight is that first and foremost, we don't know, as we sit here tonight, if we will have the leader who is the architect of this budget. We don't know if we'll have him here to implement it. And so part of something that I look at when voting for a school budget is if we have the right people in place to go and implement what is being asked to be paid for. And as we sit here tonight, we don't know that we will have the architect of this plan to implement. And some of the stories over the weekend, there was, I think, an editorial that it could potentially be pushed out a month. The decision could be very soon. We don't know. So that's sort of big concern number one for me about voting for this budget tonight. The second, even if we did know that the superintendent was going to be here, I guess before I get to that, the other challenge I have is that if we don't have our superintendent here to implement this budget, we will have to find an interim or a new superintendent. And a new superintendent could come in and say, I don't necessarily agree with everything that's in this plan, and I think we should do things differently. And so I have concerns about asking the city to fund a plan that we won't have the architect for and that the new leader may want to do differently. Beyond that, even if we do have the superintendent here to implement this plan, I've raised this with my colleagues that this budget asks for an 11% increase over the current year's budget, which may or may not sound like a lot to some, but it's a significant increase over what is typically sought. And in terms of the substance of it, I've had concerns about whether or not additional teacher professional development days are what the doctor has ordered for improving academic outcomes in Richmond Public Schools. And so I have concerns about the price tag of that, as well as other things. So given that we don't know that the leader will be here to implement it, and given that it's a very significant price tag, while the city has to still pay for police officers and firefighters and all the other services that the city provides, my concern is asking for this sort of money and not getting the bang for the buck that we really need. Depending on how this vote goes, my alternative would be to ask for something along the lines of a 3% increase so that we can fund the cost of living adjustments and the increase in the cost of health care to our employees, as well as provide some additional money for the school system and the superintendent to implement needed changes that they see as being needed. But I mean, if there's one thing that we have seen in Richmond Public Schools, it is that necessarily spending more money does not guarantee better outcomes. And I think it's vitally important that we sort of look inward and say, what aren't we doing well and how do we fix that. That doesn't necessarily mean just adding on to what we already have with new programs or new positions. So I unfortunately will not be able to vote for the budget as it is proposed, but my alternative would be a more, in my view, a more reasonable increase of 3%. We can still do the things that we need to do. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Sugar, thank you very much for your comments, and I agree with the gentleman from the 1st District. I cannot support this budget, and for the following reasons. I do not agree with several line items. They have not been fully vetted nor explained so that I can understand why more money is being moved to cover this spot. Do not agree with certain detailed information that is covered in some requests for additional staff. I just don't believe that additional staff is going to improve a department. I think you need to improve the departments that need the additional staff. Not convinced on the needs of the district or the immediate needs. I'm not understanding why we're asking for more money to do certain things, and we are struggling in many more areas. I have questioned why we're not treating every school that is struggling and on the academic improvement plan with the same, I guess, the same level of, if you will. And I just don't see that as a board member, and I don't see it as an educator, which concerns me. We have areas in central office that are asking for additional funds, and there I have some concerns within those departments. Additional professional development days are not clear to me. I have been a board member that have, since I've been on this board, expressed to, the 3 superintendents we have had in the seat that we have teachers in this district, when we have professional development days, they are not attending. It is chronic. They admit they're not going, and I have no evidence as to what we're doing with those individuals and what is the plan. All I've heard is we're going to increase these days or these hours for them to, for staff development, but they're not going now. So I'm just not clear on why we're adding more and they're not going in the first place. And I agree, and I had this written down, spending more money does not equate to better outcomes. We're gonna have to do a better job with what we have. So in the spirit of me fighting and asking for a lot of these things, and I have been told to sit down somewhere and don't ask for these additional things, I can't support this budget.
Ms. Gray.
I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. When I was here in 2009, when we had to cut multiple tens of millions of dollars out of the budget, and the following year we had to cut millions and millions more out of the budget, and every year. And I saw the impact of those cuts. They were tangible. So, you know, none of us here are promised that we're going to be here even tonight. So there's always uncertainty in who's going to be in our leadership and who's going to be here, and you know. But for me, I have trust in this budget. I have faith in the people that we have to implement the budget and the plan. And faith without works is dead. I'm going to move forward and support this budget and keep the faith. We haven't come this far to turn back.
Question to close discussion?
The question was called by Ms. Taylor, seconded by Mrs. McNeil. To close discussion, Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray? Yes. Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. McNeil?
Yes.
And Mr. Cole?
Yes.
It is unanimous, 8-0. The motion was made by Mr. Bourne and seconded by Ms. Gray to adopt the superintendent's 2015-2016 estimate of needs. Mr. Sturdivant?
No.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
No.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
No.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Pinckney Epps?
No.
And Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
It is a tie vote.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Vaughn, I believe we got an extension to tonight, is that correct? Or when does our extension run?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you have to, I believe, approve something tonight, though. You don't have an option to not approve something, so you may not approve the statement of needs, but you actually have to submit something to the city by the 6th. So unless you all are going to have another meeting, there has to be some number sent forward. And one of the things that you want to be thoughtful of is if you make changes, they got to have time to go back and fix all those changes and prepare the documentation. So this really was kind of a drop dead meeting day.
Okay.
So even if you don't adopt that increase, you have to send something, whether it's just don't do 0 and send that down, take Mr. Sturdivant's recommendation, but you got to send something for us to comply with the law.
By the 6th.
Okay.
The 6th is the deadline, but again, you typically have given days for the finance department to go fix whatever. So if you do it on the 6th, they wouldn't have a chance to actually do the work to prepare the documentation. And they have been up to 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning through this whole process, putting a lot of this stuff together.
Okay.
I have an inquiry, sir. Is it possible to get our 9th board member on a call to vote?
Okay. Let's take, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Okay.
In the back, yeah.
No? What, ask Ms. Harris Muhammad. They're on now. Okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Coleman.
Colleagues, we make our way back to our seats. Thank you very much. Okay, again, colleagues, where are you? Would you come back to your seats, please? Okay, at this time, our student needs to leave. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, Ms. Lilly, I'm going to ask you to just remind us of what happens when there is a tie vote.
22
2.1-75 of the Code of Virginia indicates that when there is a tie vote of the school board where all members are not present, the question shall be passed by until the next meeting, when it shall again be voted on, even though all members are not present. So since Ms. Larson is not here today, nor has she previously called in, that question has to pass to the next meeting of the board.
Okay. At this point, colleagues, let's be made aware. Mr. Westbay, we got an extension until Friday. So it is my plan that we will have a meeting, a special meeting before Friday that would include Ms. Larson. We will be informing you of the time of that meeting. Yes, Ms. Gray.
I just have an inquiry about why we cannot allow our 9th member to call in.
Ms. Lilly?
At this point of the meeting, the motion was made, it was seconded, and the question was called.
Okay.
It's been voted on, and it resulted in a tie vote. And so at this juncture, she was not present while that occurred.
So if she were to call in at this point, we could put any motion forward. It would just have to be a different amount, correct?
That's a different motion.
Right. So if we want to pass a budget tonight, and she's allowed to call in, we'd have 9 people voting. Either way it goes, we'd have something that...
The procedures for calling in are basically that the member would have to contact the chair to say that, on the day of the meeting, which is of course today, I won't be there for whatever the reason is. And the board would then have to vote to approve that. And so at this point, unless she has made that request, I don't think that her, even if she were to be approved to vote, if she were to be approved to participate electronically at this point, I'm not okay. That request was not made at the outset of the meeting, and nor would it affect, I think, the vote that was just tied.
I'm not trying to change the vote that just went forward, but if we are on a time crunch to go budget, and we're all basically here, she fell and broke her arm.
Right.
I can't think of any.
But the onus is on the board member per your policy to contact the chair to say, I would like to participate. And that request typically would have been made at the outset of the meeting.
Does the policy mandate that that request has to be made at the outset?
From your policy, which mirrors the state law, policy 1-6.6, and it does not specify that occurs at the outset of the meeting, but it does say that on the day of the meeting, the school board member notifies the chair of the school board that he or she is unable to attend the meeting due to an emergency or personal matter, and identifies that nature with specificity. And then the part that deals with it, that if this was a medical issue, since it appears to be, school board member notifies the school board chair that he or she is unable to attend the meeting, and that member is present. That prevents her from attending, or the member from attending physically, and that fact is reported in the minutes.
I was notified by Ms. Larson in this fashion that she would not be able to attend the meeting, but if she was needed, she would be available to call in. Ms. Lilly, do you have a comment on that statement?
I have a comment. The only comment that I have to that is the law, basically, if this was a medical condition that's preventing her from coming, There is no limit on her participating, and it does not appear, and I need to make certain that there is a vote for that. But I believe Ms. Harris Muhammad had a question while I'm looking for that.
Okay.
I do. The only concern, let me say, I don't have a concern with Ms. Larson calling it. That's not my issue. My issue is that it appears to me that we are treating board members differently in these situations. Because when we had an emergency meeting, I was under the impression, because we couldn't confirm what 2 board members were, that was why I made the motion that I made. So now we are trying to get a board member to call in to break a tie vote so we can pass the superintendent's budget. Okay, I understand all that. But it is very evident, and I am trying not to go through metamorphosis, that we treat board members differently. And that is why people behave the way they do, because of how they feel internally. Now, we're gonna have to have, I was just told, we got these policies in place and all of that, but we are treating people differently.
Let me respond to that, please, because this is a totally different situation.
Ms. Gray, thank you.
Might I respond since it's my request?
Ms. Gray, hold on. There were other hands raised, and this is what challenges your chair constantly. You see where I'm at? I'm in the middle.
Well, this was
Hold on, Ms. Gray, hold on.
a request I made.
Hold on a second. There were other hands raised. I will get to you. Ms. Epps.
Yes, Ms. Epps actually wasn't finished.
I apologize.
No,
Please
I didn't.
finish.
Okay.
So my point,
okay, go ahead, Ms.
to
Muhammad.
close my
You want to
point,
finish?
we're going to have to treat every situation that comes up that is congruent to the other the same. That's what I'm pleading us to do. And what I'm hearing is that we are getting ready to do something different than we did for 2 other board members. And it has nothing to do with my feeling one way or the other about any of them. I'm sharing with you what I am internalizing and what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing about to happen.
Okay, as your chair, I will respond to that. This is a medical situation that is hindering Ms. Larson from attending this meeting. That is a medical issue. The other issue you were speaking to were choices that were made by board members. Okay, thank you. Ms. Davis.
Yes, I'd like to refer us to our own bylaws, and I'm going to read verbatim from them. In deciding whether or not to approve a board member's request to participate from a remote location, the board shall not consider the identity of the member making the request or the matters that will be considered or voted on at the meeting. I also want to point out that with regard to her medical emergency, as I understand to have heard Ms. Lilly to just say, is that speaks to the number of times that she would be allowed to participate, any individual would be allowed to participate regarding their medical emergency. So if I had 3 medical emergencies, I would be afforded the opportunity to make the request to participate in the meeting via remote location. Whereas if it's my personal choice not to be at a meeting, it's limited to 2. So, and I...
And the caveat that it would have to be an emergency or a personal matter. It's not just your choice not to.
Okay, yes, so that's the caveat. And just a very brief point of personal privilege. I complied with this policy when I made the request to participate in the emergency meeting. It was known where I was, and the decision was made to not allow my participation as if I had not dotted every I and crossed every T. So I would be concerned that we are showing some preference.
Thank you, Ms. Epps. Ms. Taylor. Yes, Ms. Taylor. Oh, you was pointing to her. Ms. Gray.
I just want to know, have you gotten a request for Ms. Larson's participation?
Yes.
So is there a need for a motion, whether or not to allow her participation?
In the past, when medical issues have come up, the board has, I mean, this is years ago, but the board has voted to allow that member to participate via phone.
I move that we, I'd like to move that we vote on whether or not to allow Ms. Larson to participate via phone due to her medical emergency.
Yes. There's a discussion. Ms. Taylor?
Well, first of all, when exactly did you speak with her about her medical emergency? Because my understanding is it has to happen the day of.
That happened earlier today.
Okay. And then secondly, if she says that she has a medical emergency and if she is needed, is to me not the same thing as can you chime me in when the board meeting begins. It seems to me that this is a vote that I would definitely challenge to the highest extent that it can be challenged, because again, there's a difference between saying if I'm needed and needed, when you're saying that I want to use I'm needed to manipulate a vote, when you're behind by one person, that's a major manipulation. That's something that I would hope you as chair would not encourage to happen. So again, if she said, if I'm needed versus I definitely want to be chimed in, I would like you to differentiate or make the specifications as to what her exact wording was.
Mr. Chair, I withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gray. All right, Dr. Benton, you want to say something to us?
Mr. Chair, I want to make sure that this whole process remembers where we started. We were very clear at the beginning that following state code, we were not putting a budget. We were putting
Statement of need.
an estimate of needs. The end result is when the board decides on what that is, whether you don't do anything and it's the same, whether you do Mr. Sturdivant's request, which I asked them to calculate and to make sure everyone's aware, 3.1% produces about $8 million, and it just does your mandates. So it also wipes out everything with AIP that you all approved. So that's what the equivalent of 3.1%. Make sure you're aware of it. When we did superintendent's estimates of needs, the whole process was to go to and get a number to be what you all would ultimately send to the city. So again, our goal was to put what we believe was estimates of needs to move the district forward based on also being told to be aggressive about improving the district. If there is or was a set number, we can build a budget on that also. And we would not have the number of meetings that we've had to have. So if there's a target number, then we can do that. But it was like, here we started, and if the board said, we didn't want to do it, we don't want to stay within this percent or something, we could do that.
Well, Dr. Benton, we really appreciate that input. But at this point, we have had a tie vote, and I will be calling a special meeting to...
Well, what I'm saying that, Mr. Coleman, because even when you have that special meeting, if you're in the same boat, say someone's missing, we still need to have a plan of action. So I'm just kind of thinking ahead, just to put a framework for everyone. And I will also point out that one of the reasons you all did what you did the other night is it was a closed session. That was the difference that you all talked about. So I do want to remind everyone of that, okay?
Thank you, sir. Okay, Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is 4.03, receive for action proposed school start times.
part of our academic improvement plan was to, and based on board members' requests, we were asked to look at school start times. If you think about the end in mind, why would we even consider this? Next slide. Which talks about why they recommend changes to student school start time. And I'm not going to read that to social intelligence. I will just highlight that when we embarked upon this quest, we looked at research. And there's a substantial body of research. And the main thing is that it talks about the effective countermeasures for chronic sleep loss that has a whole wide range of potential benefits to students regarding their physical, mental, safety, and academic achievement. So this is tied to the well-being of the students. Going down to the bold part, this is the goal is allow the students an opportunity to achieve optimal levels of sleep, which is about 8.5 to 9.5 hours. And again, to improve their physical, mental, health, safety, and academic performance and quality of life. In fact, the Pediatrics Association actually recommends that start times for middle school and high school students should be 8:30 or later. Next slide. This PowerPoint and the research document from the Pediatrics Association is on your board docs, so anybody can see it. After what I'm bringing forward is a compromise, and it'll show why later, is that we would move forward with a modified version of what was proposed. Moving high school to 8 o'clock start time, except for community. The board at some point granted community high 15 minutes. At the beginning, they do their big assembly and some other things, so they would effectively be 7:45. The middle schools, all of them at 8:30, and then elementary schools, all at 9. This effectively gives all of our schools the same number of hours and minutes in a school day for students, which is not the case right now. That would be 6 hours and 45 minutes. Next slide. This would be a transition year. The board at some point would revisit this to see if they wanted to continue to move forward to try to get to that 8:30 for all middle school and high school students. But the reason I'm bringing forward this recommendation, and as I think the board values, is one, based on feedback from our community engagement meetings and some examples of concerns that we knew that were reiterated, unanswered questions. It's like the elementary child care issue. We're still analyzing the current information and collecting additional information. And I, right now, do not feel that we have enough information to know that that gap is closed enough, that would not create a hardship for our parents, that would not be, how should I say, equitable across our district is the issue. We have some huge pockets of success, some things that are good, but some gaping holes that we want to get to quality also. Staff meetings, for example, my meetings with staff regarding our athletic schedules. While they think they can make it work, the key is they think they can make it work. And we weren't there at a point where we really, I think, had enough information to push it fully to the 9 o'clock start time. For instance, daylight saving times is a huge problem with our lack of fields with lights and other things like that. And some other challenges that they talked about, but again, I want to compliment, for instance, our athletic directors that said the huge benefits academically were worth giving it a try. So they were willing to focus on that and go for it. But in the end, again, too many unanswered questions that presented a concern. The other point for this transition is that minimum significant change for most of the schools, while we're still making some adjustments for improvement to get closer to that optimal time. Our high school start time allows them to now get 35 minutes later, so we're headed in the right direction. Our middle school start time will then be 20 minutes later, and then we minimize the impact on our elementary schools at this point in time. Pretty much a 5-minute change, except for those 7 schools who would literally get the most significant change because those 7 schools are operating on middle school schedules. This actually would put, except for open, all of our high schools, all of our middle schools, and all of our elementary schools on the same schedule, which is making it very easy also for parents trying to understand, what's happening with the schools across the district. There's budget and facilities implications that's still unresolved. One, the positive is this schedule that we started with was in consultation with Mr. Krantz, as he looked at how do we try to decrease transportation costs and improve services. But we have unanswered and unresolved questions related to the pending facilities task force report, because that could, this next year, have some recommendations and changes that need to be taken into account, and then we don't turn around and change it again and then change it again. The academic improvement plan, which right now is obviously in doubt now. So, and then the right sizing process. Those are the types of things that put us in a very point of pause. Next slide. So some of the outcomes if we do this transition year. Move the high school start time back. You gain 35 minutes a day of additional sleep, potentially, for our children, which amounts to 175 minutes per week, 6,300 minutes per school year. This can still support options for increased teacher professional development, option for staff to come to work earlier or stay late, depending on their start time. It is about increasing support for academics and instructional time. For instance, most of our schools would gain about 10 to 15 minutes of instructional time per day, which would result in about 50 to 75 minutes per week, 200 to 300 minutes per month, 1,800 to 2,700 minutes per school year, meaning 180 days. So it is a sound, actual also movement for instructional time for the staff. Next slide. The big overarching themes that evidence strongly implicates earlier school start times, i.e. before 8:30, as a key modifiable contributor to insufficient sleep, as well as the circadian rhythm disruption in this population, meaning our middle school and high school students. So Bill, if you go back to the very first one, the second slide, excuse me, that had the times. What I'm bringing forward to you, the second slide from the beginning with the times, I guess a third one, I guess it was. The third slide, next. Is this plan that moves us closer and in the right direction, but also, I believe, minimizes the amount of disruption and unresolved questions to our parents. So I think that what this says is that the board can, and administration can rightfully say that we did take into account our community engagement meetings, but we also remain true to also creating a plan that supports academic achievement and the scientific information related to our students at middle school and high school and their sleep cycles. Basically what it said is students that are in middle school, high school can't go to bed until a certain time because things are going on with them. And that it is easier to get an elementary kid actually to go to sleep earlier than it is a middle school or high school kid. And if I knew now what I didn't know then, I would probably be having a different conversation with my son, who we fought tooth and nail, but I had to come in and tell him to turn off the flashlight, turn off the phone, hide them under the covers and all that other stuff. When the truth is, biomedically, it was not just him being defiant. So this is what we recommend for you to at least do next year, and then we can continue the board's desire to continue doing the work to look at getting close to 8:30, or you can just say, we're good with this, and leave this alone for right now. Or you can say, stay where we are. Where's Tom? Is there any questions about transportation?
Dr. Jones? Dr. Benton, I want to commend you and your team for taking a hard look at this. I know that there were varying opinions in different areas of the city relative to how this should be instituted. And so I certainly want to commend you for your flexibility, because obviously it's not what we, the entire way that we wanted to go. But I do think that it's a step in the right direction. One of the things that initially concerned me was I think as was initially proposed, you had some of the elementary kids getting out of school before.
They were in that 8 o'clock slot.
In that 8 o'clock slot. And so this, to me, makes more logistic sense. And so I certainly want to commend you for your flexibility. And I'm certainly willing to make the motion tonight that we adopt this as presented.
Second.
And Mr. Coleman, I did need to point out a key fact that there was a slight tweak. What you got originally was like 250, 320, and 350. I just shaded it back down to be quarter hours to make it easier for people to remember.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too, thank you for the flexibility in coming up with a different plan than originally presented. And so I guess I just have a couple questions that I think you've answered, but just so I'm focused on, what top 2-3 reasons why we sort of shifted from the original proposal, because I believe that the original proposal was based on evidence, on data, and so I guess that's the first part of my question.
The ones I listed were some of the key examples that, again, some of them we knew already, but they validated it. Our biggest challenge at the elementary level was the significant outcry of the ability for parents to plan, even staff, with regards to the child care issue. And while we've collected information from our schools, I did not feel that I'm comfortable with now the ability to look at the quality of the aftercare program rather than just an aftercare program. The second thing that came up is the numbers. We were trying to get an idea of if we did this, and while you have one, some of them we found had caps on how many they can handle. So we would effectively say if you got 40 slots, but now we're up to 80, I couldn't answer a question to support those other 40 parents with regards to what our options with partnering with someone. So the idea was we were going into this with that concept of how do we level the playing field and get some standard of quality of care that we are able to participate with in the school, because right now it's been kind of decentralized. But to also bring into a fold some a la carte choices with standards that we would have that we would want the schools to make available to our parents as part of that process. The athletic one, we were still struggling with. Again, I applaud our athletic directors who were very willing, because they said, one of them said point blank, the academic implications of this was huge, that it was worth the risk to try, and we figured it out. Honestly, I was not comfortable with trying to figure it out as we go. It gave me holes that I could not comfortably answer with regards to the impact on those programs, as we're actually trying to get more kids into the programs that made me nervous. And then those unresolved issues with the whole facility and task force report that hasn't come out yet, and see if that's going to have any information or things we need to consider as part of this process. And the other one is, as we seem like we're going to ramp up with the right sizing conversation. Whether any of that information be valid information. So what we really have is, so in the end I felt like we had 35 minutes in the right direction. And we're only 30 minutes off with one level of our students right now to get to that 8:30 mark.
Are you trying to convince me or yourself?
No, I'm answering your question.
Because I just wonder how our neighbors in Henrico seem to do it.
Well, one of the things I've talked
and many of their students, or an increasing number of their students, face some of the same challenges that a lot of our students face. Maybe they figured out a way to change daylight savings time or something like that.
Well, I can tell you, here's some of what they shared with me. One is, in many of their neighborhoods, they have more people driving. Mm-hmm. So that's one. Now, what that number is, I can tell you, how many of that does that? But that's one factor they did say. Okay. But they have more fields with lights that they talked about. So those are some examples where we kind of asked the question, so how did you get there? Like Chesterfield said, too costly. When I talked to Dr. Newsom, they want to get to even moving where we are. The cost factor, he said, was going to be so huge, they've kind of had to leave it alone right now. And I don't know how long, I can't remember, Henrico said they've been there for a number of years already, but those were just some of the intangibles that have helped them. So, how true that is, but that's what I was told. And I think with their bus capacity was the other thing, I'm sorry, Tommy reminded standing there, their bus capacity compared to ours, we're still challenged with the number of buses. That if we could get it done, if we could close the gap on how many buses we have in our fleet.
Okay, any more discussion? Tim.
sorry, I have to step away for a moment. In regard to the high school start time of 8 o'clock, the exception of community, what is that exception with community?
The board granted community a 15-minute earlier start time, not this board, the previous board, because they do some type of specialized assembly at the beginning of their day. That's prior to the instructional day starting.
Okay. So then they would be required to be there at 7:45?
Yes, and that's still later than what the time they start now, Mr. Jeffers? Open. But I know community 7:55 open is before that. I mean, community is, they're even, so this is still later for them. It gives them still, so all he asked for is consideration to keep a 15-minute approval. So this action will still be later start time for them even with this change and still honoring their approved 15 minutes.
Okay. I'm just saying that because I have a daughter who's a student at community, and it seems like, you know, when her bus picks her up, she's there at the same time as the other students, and she gets out at 2:05. So I'm not seeing where that extra 15 minutes is actually in existence.
Because remember, our high schools now start at 7:25, so they're still moving back. But I'm just telling you what we found in the report that they had 15 minutes. So I can't answer that without specifically. You're saying that they're not.
I would like to see that. I don't like seeing that exception to the rule with them being there. Outside of that, I'm totally okay with the 8 o'clock to 2:45. But until they can show us what they're doing, because again, my daughter's there, and I know they meet in the auditorium, the cafeteria area where they make announcements and things like that in the morning. But at this stage, I can't see where an extra 15 minutes different from everyone else is justifiable. And I used to work there as well, so I'm familiar with the morning meetings and what that encompasses.
Board can make a motion to modify that.
Call the question, Mr. Chair.
I would like to make a motion to.
There's already got one motion on the floor. That Dr. Jones made this motion just to accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Can I do an amendment?
She just called the question. Called it, Ms. Gray called it.
I was in the middle of speaking when she said that, though.
She just called the question. She just called.
I'm saying is that when she called the question, I was still
I'm
talking.
saying, I heard her before you called the question.
I don't deny that she called for the question. What I'm saying is that I wasn't finished talking when that happened. I was still trying to figure out what was going on, and you all were explaining to me what was happening. So I'm just wondering, what is the process for, is it possible to make an amendment to the motion?
She called for the question before you tried to make your
Second.
I second Dr. Jones's motion. Mr. Bourne second, call the question, correct? Right. Okay. Ms. Lewis
Yes,
is trying to
ma'am.
get it right.
So we have to vote to end discussion.
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne? Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. McNabb?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
So the discussion has been closed. The motion was made by Dr. Jones, seconded by Mrs. Harris Muhammad to approve the proposed school start times. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr.
I'm
Bourne?
sorry, are we voting on the motion?
We're voting on the motion.
Okay, Mr. Coleman, I see you looking at your phone, but I have my hand up to ask a question.
That discussion has been closed.
No, can I make it a friendly amendment, is what I was trying to get through before the motion went forward, before the call to question went forward, to make a friendly amendment.
Is there a second for a friendly amendment?
Well,
what is, you have to state what what your amendment would be to the motion that's
To
already
accept,
before.
to accept the recommendation of the superintendent with the exception of the exception to community high school.
You wait a second. What would be?
So in other words, if community can start at the same time as every other high school, they can get that extra rest that their bodies need as well.
Second. My only concern was, I'm sorry, okay, I was out of order, I'm sorry.
Their school starts time is 7:25.
In order to debate it, it needs to be.
She was asking a question.
Was there a motion? Yeah, I mean, there was a motion.
And it was second.
Ms. Yes, just seconded.
I'm sorry, did you?
Is there a discussion on the amendment?
Yes.
Ms. Mohammed?
The only concern I have with that is the principal is not here, so we don't know if adjusting what the team has put in place, even though a previous board voted on it, what that would do to whatever their plan is at community. So I would want to hear how this, how he feels in terms of, moving that back or adjusting it before I would feel comfortable in supporting that. I really would want to hear what his thoughts are behind that first.
All right.
Because I think there was a reason.
How about pending verification from communities at that time is required?
Ms. Taylor?
I'm just trying to adjust my friendly adjustment.
Hold on, Ms. Taylor. Okay, Dr. Jones?
Well, I share Ms. Harris-Muhammad's desire to hear from the principal, to get some confirmation as to whether those 15 minutes are necessary. I certainly understand, Ms. Taylor's desire to do away with that, but I think if we could get some confirmation, and I think if we did that, made the motion for that after we were able to talk with the principal, in order to afford that courtesy, or them that courtesy, I think that might be the better way to do it, so we don't put the cart before the horse.
Mr. Jeffers, you want to say something to it?
If I could add just a portion of this, and thank you, President Coleman. When we proposed start times, I had a conversation with Mr. Brown at Community, because he was very concerned that we wanted to continue to have an exception for Community High School. Since the foundation of Community High School, they've had 15 minutes at the beginning of the day, which they call community, which the entire school gathers, they participate together, and that is a part of the history and philosophy and operation of Community High School. So that's why their day is 15 minutes longer than everyone else's day. It has been. Of course, the board did an exception to it, but that is the purpose of it. And so I can share that with you. So he called me about it, did send an email because he wanted to make sure that they continue to have the flexibility to have that 15 minutes. So,
Okay, so to close discussion on the, Mr. Sturtevant.
So do I understand that to mean that community is good with this?
That's what Mr. Jeffers was just.
Right.
They asked for. Okay. Then close the.
I just want to just end with, again, having a daughter who attends the school, she's not considered late until 7:25, which is when other schools are considered late. And with her bus coming at 6:40, getting her there sometimes not until 10 minutes after, 15 minutes after. I just want to know if they're still practicing it, because from what I'm hearing from my daughter and other students, that's not the practice. And if you just want them there because that's the way it's always been, or just in case you should have a meeting in the morning, I just want some clarification that there's that practice that says we're actually using this time for this specific practice, and that's going to be consistent, and we're just not having it there just for the sake of having it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Taylor. I'm sure someone can speak with you offline on that. Closing the question, to close the discussion on the friendly amendment. Moved and second. Close the discussion on the friendly amendment.
I'm sorry, who made the motion? I heard Dr. Jones second, I didn't. Ms. Pinckney.
Ms. Harris-Muhammad.
Don't give me anything until I know what you're getting.
Okay, so Ms.
I'll take
To close the discussion on the amendment, the motion was made by Ms. Harris Mohammed, seconded by Dr. Jones. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne? Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Harris Mohammed?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Pinckney Epps?
Yes.
And Mr. Copeland?
Of course.
So the motion being voted on is Ms. Taylor's motion, seconded by Ms. Pinckney Epps. It's the amendment to accept the recommendation of the proposed school start times with the exception of community high school. Mr. Sturdivant?
This is Ms. Taylor's amendment?
Yes.
Is it still on the table?
Yes.
It's not been withdrawn?
No.
No.
Ms. Gray?
No.
Mr. Bourne?
No.
Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Mohammed?
No.
Dr. Jones?
No.
Mrs. Pinckney Epps?
No.
Mr. Copeland?
No.
Motion failed, 7-1. So the original motion made by Dr. Jones and seconded by Ms. Harris Mohammed was to approve the proposed school start times. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Mohammed?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Pinckney Epps?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. The next item is 4.04, receive action for board training per the memorandum of understanding with the state. Mr. Chairman?
Okay, hold on 1 second. We're on superintendent.
But I have a point of personal privilege.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I am prepared to ask the board tonight to reconsider the entire reconstitution plan at MLK until we can receive.
Ms.
We're going.
Yeah, Ms. Mohammed. I'm sorry. I thought you were pertaining to this issue. So.
To me, it's a part of the MOU of understanding. I don't see anywhere else I could have a point of privilege on the agenda but 4.04 pertaining to the issue that I have, to the concern that I have. There was nowhere else on the agenda.
The MOU is
And
triggered
it
by-
was in an email that I asked for us to discuss it tonight. It was a part of my email. I understand that the agenda needed to be amended. I did not request the agenda to be amended. So I'm taking a personal point of privilege to see if we can get a consensus to at least delay or at least to delay until the board receives the information on the process. That's what I am asking.
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification, separate from Mrs. Muhammad's request. They're actually two separate things. The MOU you're signing is tied to Thompson Middle School. It has nothing to do with, so that's, just to clarify, not to get into a request, but I just want to clarify, this is tied to the memorandum of understanding that you already signed regarding Thompson Middle School.
Are we at 4.04? Are we at 4.04?
Yes.
Yes.
Does that not read, receive for action board training per memorandum of understanding with the state?
Or it is
Which is
for
Okay,
Thompson.
which is, I understand that. Okay. I don't have a copy of it. So I felt as though it would be appropriate for me to take personal privilege to ask if my board colleagues could do my team of teachers a favor to at least put a halt on the process until we can get the process written and it's shared with us. That's all I'm asking. There is no other opportunity for me to ask that. And I understand that this 4.04 relates directly to Thompson. I do, I understand that. But we have a sense of urgency. I'm not asking for you all to vote to have the superintendent delay it altogether. But there's a high level of discomfort in that school.
Okay.
And I'm trying to support the people that I serve.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mohammed.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on, Dr. Berry. Ms. Little.
I think that as a matter of protocol and of course, appointed personal privilege is up to the chair to determine whether or not that moves forward. But I think that because that is a separate and distinct item that is on the agenda, that you dispense with your other items, and the board needs to consider whether or not they wish to amend the agenda to add that as an item for consideration, and then you move forward from that point in time. Because that item has not been noticed or what have you. But I think that one option is for, of course, you've already passed the amending of the agenda stage, but either the board can dispense with whether they consider that now as amending the agenda, or they wait until all the other items have been on the agenda have been dispensed with and come back to your request to make that motion for consideration.
Okay, Ms. Mohammed, I heard your request. Hearing my legal counsel. At this point, we want to continue with the agenda and revisit your request. Thank you.
My only final comment is that remind you that this was carried over from the last meeting, so this is the last date the state was expecting this to be addressed.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. You all received an email from Ms. Larson with the recommendation dealing with this topic. It included one more session with CRSS, and then we would transition to using the VSBA to deliver the rest of the training, again, that is required through the situation with school improvement in Thompson. So, Ms. Epps.
For clarity, I would like some explanation about this particular board governance. As I understand, it's being mandated because Thompson is unaccredited. Will it then follow, I guess, just a general type of board governance, or does it speak to specific items, specific governance that we would need as it relates to Thompson?
Good evening. The memorandum of understanding is between the Richmond City Schools Board and the State Board of Education. And if you look at Section 3, Number 4, and this should have been attached to the Friday report, the MOU, it says the Richmond City School Board and Superintendent will implement a professional development plan for all board members, the superintendent, pertinent central office, and building level staff, which focuses on their respective roles and responsibilities for school improvement and priority issues listed in Section 3, which is pretty much all tied to school improvement, data collection, monitoring, things like that. So that is, that gives you the detailing of the roles and responsibilities as the focus.
Follow up. So, Ms. Garland, can you confirm that that would actually include, I guess, some type of team building? We've attempted governance training before. We haven't concluded that, so I'm just wondering, do we have an opportunity to couple what we already started as far as building this team in relation to board governance? I mean, understanding our roles. Does this speak to understanding our roles only in this school improvement process, or is there a larger, okay.
So just to go back a little bit, you remember when you did the MOU for Thompson, you pointed that particular line item out, because I wanted you to be aware. And then what I did to be proactive was I solicited a draft proposal from VSBA and shot that to the state. Because one of the things is that we did not want to happen, because the way the language is reading, it doesn't specify. It doesn't say you must, other than the broad, what she just described, it didn't say, these things. And when I talked to the state superintendent, and had a brief conversation with the director of school improvement, as well as Ms. Garland did, they want this to be about what makes the board and administration perform better. So while they have those key things, there are other things that they believe you do need to do based on your own needs. So subsequent to that, then I had another conversation with the ED from VSBA, asking about what are your must-haves on your end. For instance, she conveyed, because they work on Norfolk, that our must-have, as an example, is 100% participation, or we don't come. And so I said, then you have to be clear there, because they will cancel, and they did it in the other district. Somebody wasn't coming, they canceled the meeting.
That was VSB, I'm sorry, that was
Yes.
VSB.
So they will not come if it's not 100%. But then, so it really is what the core things that they know about governance to be successful in school improvement. Okay, and then what you talk about as a board and what they also have seen working with your board to put together the plan. So they will shape it. Like something has come up already with the board, and I think Ms. Larson, I'm not privy to it, shot a response back to BSBA on your behalf saying, can you add this? And I can't remember what it was, but the answer is yes. So I just want to walk you through this process. So her comment, I think Mr. Coleman already said it to me, was that she wasn't going to be here, was that something, I think she communicated to you all about finishing one last session and then transitioning to VSBA to do the rest of it that meets the state requirement for this process.
Do you need a motion? Mr. Coleman? I think I saw a price tag of like maybe $8,000.
Yes, I'm doing this from memory, yes.
The
Is our intent to use the money that was given?
Yeah, thank you. That's where I was going.
That there was no, to my knowledge, they didn't say you had to use X, Y, and Z. So part of the reason you were able to use that funds and go to CRSS is because it was externally funded. Had it not been externally funded, you couldn't have just picked who you wanted. If it was our dollars, you would have had to go through the procurement process because that proposal exceeded the direct purchase option for the board. But there's no reason why we can't still tap into whatever's left in that money and not come out of the district's board, not the district's funds.
Are you?
And Ms. Garland just said the state is also contributing money for it also.
Are you looking for a motion or just a
Yes,
consensus?
we need a motion.
I move that we approve the plan to receive the required training as stated in the MOU with the Department of Education concerning Thompson Middle.
Second.
We have to specifically state, okay? Okay, yes. Yes, yes.
Okay, so VSBA, one session with CRS and the remaining sessions or session with VSBA. Is it discussion?
Mrs. Coleman?
Discussion.
Okay. Ms. Mohammed, followed by Mr. Ball.
The concern that I have with going with VSBA is they put that stipulation of 100% participation. And what we have shown so far as a whole board, we have not obtained that. So, you know, I will have to vote no because I know we're not going to get 100% participation in that governance training. I would like for us to just finish the governance training with CRSS since we started with them because we, you know, it's just not going to happen. And we have to be realistic about it. It sounds good and we know that it's something that, and I heard different things. I heard that the state was mandating it. Now I'm hearing that VSBA is saying if we don't have 100% participation, they're not going to come. Either way, we have to be dedicated to be there every session that they are requiring for us to attend. Based on our record with governance training, that is not going to happen. So
Okay.
I will have to vote no to this.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mohammed. Mr. Bourne.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. I'm going to be brief. I'm going to support this because it's important that we satisfy this requirement for school improvement. But I do have an issue, and I'll get on my soapbox for a minute about VSBA. I'm not sure that they've been our best partner over the last couple, 3 months. And so to the extent that we need to use them, I'll hold my nose. But when one of their member organizations calls and asks them to help with a piece of legislation and they take a pass, and we spend money to be members with them, I think it is disingenuous for them to want to work with us on this level. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bourne. Hold on one second, Ms.
I just wanted to clarify that it is the state's intent that there is 100% participation by the central office administration and the board members.
Thank you, Ms. Garland. Appreciate that so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Mr. Dr. Jones.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get further clarity. So, intent mandate, everybody that comes, we don't pass this threshold. That's all I'm trying to figure out. Is that what was just said? Is that what I just said?
At this point, based on what we're hearing, the intent by the state is for that, and VSBA is asking us to meet that intent. That's the motivation. No, that's it. That's all the word is. It's not saying we won't if people don't show up. It's not saying that.
And how many sessions are we talking about?
We're still working on the number of sessions. That's part of the process. Okay, Ms. Evans. Be mindful of your time.
I'm quick. Would we have an opportunity to accomplish this goal in a 2-day board retreat? You know, are we allowed that?
The specific times and all of that, we still have opportunity to develop that once we come into this agreement. Okay. All right. Anyone want to close the discussion? Okay.
Second.
The motion was made to call the question by Ms. Taylor, seconded by Ms. Pinckney Epps. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne? Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
No.
This is to close the question.
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Pinckney Epps?
Yes.
And Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Ms. Gray made the motion and seconded by Ms. Taylor to approve one more governance session with CRSS and transition into remaining sessions with VSBA. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne?
Yep.
Mrs. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Harris Muhammad?
No.
Dr. Jones?
No.
Ms. Pinckney Epps?
No.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-3. The next item is 4.05, receive for action a resolution to surplus Arlington Road and issue a quitclaim deed for Arlington Road.
Chairman, I'd like to, if you will allow me to pull this particular item tonight and ask for it to possibly come up for reconsideration at the meeting on March the 16th.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
It's late, bro. My hair has not grown out or anything. But it could have.
Next item is 4.06, receive for action proposed revisions to policies 1-2.5, compensation and expenses, and 1-5.8, school board travel of the policy manual.
Mrs. Lilly?
Just as a quick summary, the board has two policies in front of it for consideration tonight. This is the fourth read of both policies. 1-2.5 is your compensation and expenses, as well as the new proposed policy. You have two options that you need to decide between, option 1 and option 2 for policy 1-5.8, which is your new school board travel policy. Summary of revisions was noted or was placed in front of it that noted the changes.
Could you state the highlights of
Okay,
the differences between the options?
Okay. The differences between option 1 and 2 for policy 1-5.8. Option 1, if you will recall, it started with language that had a limited number of out-of-town state trips, and I believe the original one was 2, and it went to 1, or the proposed language went to 1. These are, again, board member recommendations. In the original proposed policy, there was language that in each of the sections where there was a mandate that travel be in a certain framework, there was a statement that said, unless special circumstances existed which required deviation from the policy, those were removed. And in the meals and incidental expenses for option 1, it requires that members provide itemized expenses and receipts for your per diem expenses. And it removed local and long distance telephone calls to the other expense section. For option 2, the only changes that were made from the original policy language, again, it still has the same number of, it has the 2 trips. For this particular one, it has an exception for NSBA conferences. Yes, that's for out-of-state travel. It accepted the limit on the number of board member attendees. It was listed as 1 in the original language. I'm sorry, let me be clear. In the original language for out-of-state travel, there was a mandate that that it was limited to 1 board member attending that particular conference. And option 2 accepts NSBA conferences to that limit. In local and state travel, in-state travel, that section, there would be 3 nights for in-state travel. And that was increased from 2 to 3. So those were the major changes in option 2. Again, from board member recommendations.
Okay, Ms. Taylor.
I'm sorry, could you
Right. Because there were, the board member recommendations on the proposed policies were so different, I had to break it into 2 options.
Okay.
All right, and so option 2 captured a board member's, all of his comments on the proposed policy. For example, there were 2 in-state trips per night, 2 nights of in-state travel that was limited to 1. I'm sorry, the number of out-of-state travel or trips that could be taken was limited to 1. There was language in the proposed policy that said, for example, depending on your per diem, it was unless there were special circumstances that required deviation from this policy, the board would have that discretion to make a different decision if you were going somewhere that did not quite fit into that per diem allotment. So that was kind of, if you look at the summary page in front of it, it kind of tells you what those changes were from the proposed section. And again, this is the 4th read, so the first couple of iterations of this had the track changes in it, so you could see kind of the difference between what was proposed versus what was changed. And then on option 2, the only changes that were made from the proposed section was that for in-state travel, the number of days or nights rather that a person can stay overnight was increased to 2. That was the recommendation. Increased to 3 from the recommended 2. and that for out-of-state travel, where the proposed policy limited the number of board members that could attend to one, the proposed language in option 2 says that except for NSBA conferences, if that would not apply for NSBA conferences. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
And this is all the options for that one particular policy?
Yes, that's all we received up to this point.
And we're discussing just the one?
You're discussing and voting as this is the fourth read on all of it. So, for
But
example,
we're just discussing the first one now.
no, I discussed both of them.
Because there was one that included traveling back and forth.
Right, yeah, that was the very first policy. He had asked me to talk about the differences between two options, which is policy 1-5.8. 1-2.5, compensation and expenses, is the very first policy in this particular section.
Okay.
And that is the language that deleted reimbursement for personal travel to and from school board meetings.
Okay.
Okay, so that is a separate policy, and I would suggest that you vote on, you can vote on them separately as far as 1-2.5, and then you can vote on 1-5.8, if that's what your pleasure is.
Okay. So I guess my question would be, as it relates to where we are, a motion was put on the table, so that motion is done away with, and we're starting from scratch, is what you're saying?
Excuse me?
There was a motion placed on the table, has that gone away and we're starting from scratch?
I think that particular motion a while back was to delay it. If I'm not mistaken, I would have to research.
No, it was to vote on, and we had a split vote, and we were supposed to vote at the next meeting, and...
Or was it to delay it, or I think the question was to delay it, and
No, the question was to vote on the two separate motions. There was a motion to move ahead with removing the travel back and forth to board meetings, and then a separate motion was made to reduce the amount of travel down to one out-of-town trip annually. We voted on that, and it was a split vote. Now, we were supposed to go back, and I remember specifically because that's when we went behind closed doors. And when we came out, it was supposed to be on the agenda for that evening, but our chairman, Ms. Coleman, decided that he wanted to adjourn the meeting before we went back to discussion. And then it was all of this miscommunications between some of my colleagues and the press about what was discussed in closed, which was completely inaccurate. So that's how it sticks out in my mind because of all of the prevaricating that came after that closed session. And then you adjourned the meeting before we were able to actually have a discussion.
Okay.
It was on the agenda.
It is, so are you bringing, I guess, a point of order that this is,
It's a mute subject because we voted on something. It was a split vote, and then we were supposed to vote on it at the very next meeting, but Don, you took it, pushed it back to the end of the agenda. When we came out of close, you never went back to it. So my understanding has been, and always has to date been, that whenever a motion has been made, voted on, and it's a split vote, and you go to the next meeting, it has to be discussed at that next meeting, but you took it off the agenda. And
okay, Ms. Taylor, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk, if you could research that, and we'll bring it back. Go ahead, Ms.
I have
a question. Hold up, Ms. Lilly, go ahead.
For the record, and of course you have to research the minutes, but even if that were the case, a motion on any matter can be made at any time, and so it doesn't preclude the motion from coming up again.
I don't have a problem with that. I just want some clarity on the first part.
Because you said it was a moot point, I just wanted to be clear that it doesn't take it off the table indefinitely.
Oh, that's not what I'm trying to accomplish. I just want to make sure that clarity is brought to the fact that the motion had a split vote, and it was supposed to be brought up in the next meeting. It was taken off of the agenda by Mr. Coleman, and I just want to know what needs to happen. If you can do that research and we can come back to it, that would be perfectly fine.
What needs to happen is that it needs to be brought back forward as a motion.
But also, what needs to happen first is what happened to the first motion needs to be addressed, researched and addressed, and then as Mr. Coleman said, we can come back to that topic after that's done.
I have a question, Mr. Cole.
Me too.
Wow, I am trying my best tonight. And my vice chair isn't here, so I can't just get up and leave. This people. Mr. Sturman.
Well, I have a question and a motion, and this is for clarification. For Ms. Lilly, policy 1-2.5 is on fourth read, so that is eligible for a vote tonight, right?
Both of these are eligible for.
Okay, that's what I
for
meant. And then the second policy, 1-5.8, we have two options, option 1 and option 2. Option 1, I think, is the one that I had asked for. That's the more restrictive version.
Correct.
And then option 2 is a less restrictive version. Okay.
Right.
I just want to make sure I'm clear as to the posture of this. I have a motion, and I would move that we
I'm
adopt.
sorry, I'm sorry, before you make your motion.
Ms. Taylor, you
I
are
just want
out
to say, I
of
want to say
order.
that Ms. PPF, you saw that she was up to speak before Glenn started speaking, and you knew that her hand has been up for quite a while. So just out of respect, can she have a chance to speak to that?
Let him make his motion.
Well, actually, can
and then
she be allowed to speak in all
during the
fairness?
discussion.
Can she have the opportunity to speak?
I apologize. I just cannot keep up.
Well,
I'm
Mr.
serious.
Coleman,
I totally
I
apologize.
understand
I
that
just
because
said
I'm
we're
telling you
moving
that
on.
what
At this
I'm
point,
saying to you, Mr. Coleman, is that
Ms. Taylor, we're moving on. I'm sorry. I apologize. I missed Ms. Epps' hand. It's moved on now.
of course.
Mr.
Thank you,
Sturman,
Mr. Coleman.
thank you.
And Ms. Epps can talk during the discussion phase of this
All
as
right,
well. So I move that we adopt policy 1.1-2.5, compensation and expenses as provided here tonight, as well as policy 1-5.8 regarding school board travel, option 1, the more restrictive option.
Second.
Moved and second.
Discussion.
Ms. Epps.
I never got a response to that email that I sent that had a series of questions. And so for at least, can we, and I'm willing to narrow it to these, one question. Can we at least see an addendum attached to this policy which refers us to the state guidance that we're following? I mean, it's vague. It says, okay, we're going to follow what the state's doing. What's the state doing?
Thank you, Ms. Epps. Ms. Taylor.
I just want to follow up with the fact that, again, a motion was made. There was a tie vote. We never came back to that tie vote, and that hasn't been addressed, and I think I have a lot of concern.
Again, I take full responsibility
As you
for
should.
that, but at this point
I understand.
tonight.
I'm still talking though, Mr. Coleman, I appreciate that, but
I was
I'm
answering-
still talking though, but I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
And secondly, just for a point of discussion for this particular motion, I just want to say it also concerns me greatly because you're talking about a policy that has been in place for way before I had even considered being on the board. And it just brings me to, as it has been reported all through the news, that I've spent somewhere around $199 in 2 years. But just, Ms. Lilly, if you could do the research, there was a paper shredder that was purchased by Ms. Gray that cost $352. That was not placed on the record, and that costs more than the travel that I would take over a 4-year span. So if doing travel, it wasn't, when I look back over the FOIA request that was made, are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
It was on the district expenses request that the board approved.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that it was not announced, like everything
That
that's,
was after.
but it wasn't put on the record. Everything up to this point that has been purchased, and that, is that for personal use, or is that for the use of the entire board? The paper shredder that's $352.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
No, I'm
Taylor.
not, I'm asking a question. Is that for the entire use for the entire board, or is that just for one individual board member? I'm asking a question.
I'm going to instruct the clerk. not to answer that question.
This is
Because
transparency.
it's-
This is about,
it
this is public
is
funds.
transparency.
This is coming from our travel funds. This is about being transparent. If we're spending $352 listed under Kimberly Gray's name from travel expenses, then I just want to know if it's something that the entire board can use. Because again, this is taxpayer dollars. And if you're going to spend that much, is that something that the public can come in and have access to? Is that something that the entire board can have access to? It's not a legit question, Don Coleman, because I really legitimately want to know.
Of course it's a legitimate question. Of course, because you asked it.
Right.
It's a
I mean, it's
legitimate
taxpayer dollars that's purchasing the shredder.
And
Yes,
we know who purchased that shredder.
Ms. Kimberly Gray.
Thank you.
So I just want to know,
That's the end of it.
but is it coming from tax dollars?
We
Because that's more
approved
than
it.
the $199 that I have been,
Okay.
that has been stated that I've used on travel back and
Thank
forth
you.
to board meetings that's been in place. And I just want to make sure
Okay.
that we understand how all tax dollars are being spent.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, there we go. I was wondering what the time. All right. Okay, thank you. Ms. Muhammad.
Share with Mr. Sturdivant why I had shared option 2 with Ms. Lilly, because some VSBA conferences are a three-night stay. So, and they're not in the Richmond area. So that was the reason for bullet 1, okay? And that's very, very important that you all know that, particularly the conference in Williamsburg. And I'm a delegate, so if we change that, then I would not be able to participate as a delegate the entire time. The second thing that I shared with Ms. Lilly was that because VSBA works through NSBA, and in the past, board members have attended that conference, if we limit, because those two, even though NSBA is the larger entity of the school boards in America, VSBA is a part of that, and as a delegate, you know, if I would go and then another board member want to go, it would have to limit. So that I wanted to share the rationale for my 2 statements with that. So if we can amend it, that would be good to not exclude me as serving as a delegate. Because that's your motion would exclude me. I would have to drive back and forth in bullet 1, okay, for one night. And then you would have to pay me for the gas to go. And then the second one, you know, limiting to 1 board member to go. If I'm a delegate for VSBA and I go represent us and another board member wants to go, then you all as a board would have to decide, is the delegate going to go or one other person? So that's why I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
Can we amend it? I mean, what are you comfortable with? I just wanted to share that before we voted because that's important.
I don't begrudge you the opportunity to amend it or the points that you make. I mean, I think Williamsburg is drivable. I understand that we would reimburse you for that gas. I think the intent of this was to sort of tighten up some challenges that we had in the policies. And so it's not going to be perfect in every situation like maybe that, but I mean, if it's...
I'm going to step on faith and follow it and make the amendment because I'm driving, okay? So, and it's wear and tear. So I would like to amend the motion to add the 2 bullets of, of option 2.
For the state, go ahead, you just asking for an exception for the state.
I'm asking to amend Mr. Sturdivant's motion. Mr. Bourne was talking to me.
So the thing that rings real true with me, Ms. Harris Muhammad, is the fact that you serve as a delegate, and I don't think anybody on the school board would want our representation to be hindered by this policy. So would you, in your amendment, be agreeable to, not just for you, but for any delegate that serves as the VSBA representative, just limiting that extra night as the delegate to the VSBA conference, or the conference? If you are serving as an official delegate, appointed, duly appointed by this board, then.
So you said that wouldn't apply to me as a delegate, is that what you're saying?
No, it would, that
No,
would, that
so
would
like-
solve your.
Yeah, but it would also apply to school board members 20 years from now who are serving in an official capacity as a delegate. So it's not just if I want to go, I can get my 3 nights paid for too. It's just the delegates that really need to be there the entire time.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing you say, whoever is serving as a delegate, this piece of the policy would not apply to them because they're serving as a delegate. I guess that's what I need to hear.
You'd be able to stay overnight.
That I would be able to stay the 3 nights, and that wouldn't be a concern. But if Mr. Sturdivant wanted to go, and he's not a delegate, then he would have to go the 2 nights. Okay, I can agree with that. I just wanted to be clear. So I guess we would have to still amend it by saying the exception would be for delegates. Okay, for both bullets. Yes, because the second bullet, if you add for the exception of a delegate, that wouldn't include, that person is a delegate, so they're automatically gonna go if they choose to go. Okay. I'm comfortable with that.
I second that amendment.
All right, Mrs. Goodman,
Yeah.
Okay, so there's,
no need friendly amendment?
so I just want to be clear for the record. Option 1 would be modified to add in local and in-state travel, and in the paragraph for out-of-state travel, an exception for members who serve as delegates.
Can you touch on that, Jen? Can you repeat that?
Oh, okay. I just want to be clear on what's being amended. In the paragraph for local, option 1 is presented by Mr. Sturdivant, would be amended by this friendly amendment in local and in-state travel, that paragraph, and out-of-state travel, that paragraph, to include an exception for the nights for members who serve as delegates. Okay. And for out-of-state travel, that would mean that if a delegate and another member can go to those trips.
No.
No,
Just the delegate.
Just the
Okay, I got
delegate.
you. I just want
Exceptions only.
to, okay, gotcha. All right. I just wanted to make sure I had the language. Thank you.
So that still means only one person can go to the NSBA conference, delegate or not.
Oh, you have 30 seconds, Taylor.
I just want to say that I just find it very concerning and very disheartening that here we are as public servants trying to serve children, trying to give them the best based on our knowledge. And that there are so many barriers that are put in place. I haven't seen or heard you all ask one time for spending from central administration, whether it's their credit card usage, whether it's their travel. Not one time are you holding anyone accountable but certain members on this board, and that's problematic. You know, these policies have been in place for a while, and for you all to try to hinder us now, it's just a sad state, and it just doesn't enable us to do what we were put here to do, which is to serve children. And I would just hate to see anyone do this to you all on your own personal jobs, because this is my career. This is what I'm passionate about, serving children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Okay, there is, okay.
Okay, so I'm sorry, let me make sure I'm clear. I just want to make sure I'm clear that even though at the NSBA conference, only the person who is assigned as a delegate on the board can go, no other board member. But on other boards, all of their board members go, whoever can go. So I don't agree with that part. I think if you all are trying to limit how many people are going out of state, then it should, particularly, and that's why I put it in here, NSBA, to ring a bell because this is a National School Board Association conference where school board members who serve in that capacity arrive at whatever place they are to receive training on being inefficient school board members. I don't want it to be just the delegate. I don't think it should just be the delegate that should attend.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Muhammad. Okay, Madam Clerk, where are we? Ms. Epps? Ms. Epps?
And just for the record, when I hold this pencil up, that means I have a question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'd like to speak to the fact that it's not mandatory that it's the delegate that goes. And so if one of our other colleagues made the request to go first, and then the delegate comes behind and says, well, hey, I want to go, but it's not even required for the delegate to go, what do we do?
Thank you for that question. Okay, Madam Clerk, where are we?
A motion was made by Mr. Sturdivant and seconded by Ms. Gray to adopt policy 1-2.5, the compensation and expenses as provided, as well as policy 1-5.
Hold on. Okay, so the motion was made to try to do both of them at one time.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
As well as policy 1-5.8, school board travel, option 1, modified to include exceptions for persons serving as delegates.
Okay.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor? Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
No.
Dr. Jones? Mrs. Pinckney Epps?
No.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
It's a tie vote.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. All righty.
The next
Madam
item
Clerk.
is 4.07, receive for action human resources actions.
School board members, good evening. I bring for you tonight the school board agenda. HR actions for approval include the nomination of 1 employee, the change of contract of 3 employees, the change of contract regarding school counselors of 12 employees. HR actions for information include the resignation of 6 employees, the rescission of resignation of 1 employee, and the rescission of employment of 1 employee.
Mr. Bourne. Thank you. I move that we adopt and approve the human resources actions.
Second.
The motion was made by Mr. Bourne, seconded by Ms. Harris Muhammad. Mr. Sturdivant? Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor? Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Pinckney Epps?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. The next item is to receive school board travel and district activities request. There are some changes to what I passed out to you all earlier, as soon as I can find my notes. Ms. Harris Muhammad is requesting to remove from her request attending the RPS Living Legacies Breakfast, and Mrs. Pinckney Epps has added to her request under her district activity, a parent involvement program, and so that is estimated at $7,000, which brings the total estimated cost for every one of these items on your sheets to $8,140. I'm sorry, the other items on here were Mr. Coleman requesting to attend the VSBA Southside Region Spring Forum and to donate $500 to Ms. Harris Muhammad's Teacher Appreciation Dance. Ms. Pinckney Epps also wanted to attend the 2015 Southside Region Spring Forum. Mr. Bourne is requesting to attend the RPS Living Legacies Breakfast.
Madam Clerk,
Yes.
you can remove that from the request. I never intended for the cost of the ticket to come out of here.
Okay.
I just wanted to RSVP to it.
Wasn't sure, thank you. He's also donating $250 to Ms. Harris Muhammad's Teacher Appreciation Dance, and Ms. Larson is donating $250 to Ms. Harris Muhammad's Teacher Appreciation Dance, and Ms. Harris Muhammad is requesting to go to the Southside Region Forum.
Madam Clerk,
Yes.
I would also like to donate to the Teacher Appreciation Dance. Was that request for $250?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
And I have one additional request from my funds, and it was a
Yes.
request I got from the Mayor's Youth Academy robotics team. It's sponsorship for those students who've been allowed to participate in the robotics competition, and it is for $3,000.
Okay. Are there any other? Mr. Stern?
Oh, so,
Yes.
I also donate $250 to the Teacher Appreciation.
Thank you.
same here.
Thank you.
Ms. Taylor.
Thank you all so very much.
One I would like to possibly, I'm not sure if I'm going to definitely need it or not, but Dr. Bedden has an engagement to, I believe, if you can clarify, Dr. Bedden, engagement to speak at Cedar Street this month. What date is that on? I think it's like $30. And while he's pulling that up, I also would like to have money put aside for a spring newsletter. And I've already been approved, so I don't know if it needs to go back on, but I had money allocated for Black History Month at schools throughout the 5th District, and I would just like to have that time frame bumped over to the month of March because of all the inclement weather we've had as of late.
Ms. Taylor, for the newsletter, do you have an estimate cost?
I have no idea.
Ms. Taylor.
Okay, I guess a range maximum of 1,500. Whatever the cost is, of course, I'll have the receipts to correlate with that. And then for the tickets, 2 tickets would be sufficient.
2 tickets?
To Dr. Bedden's event at Cedar Street. Say it again, I'm sorry. Okay. I know we got an email as of recent, so it may not have made its way to you as of yet. Just be prepared, it's on its way.
It's the 14th, Dr. Madden. They had you on the list. It came to my church, just so you know. It's the 14th.
So yeah, I think that'll suffice. Thank you.
Okay.
So the additions are Mr. Sturdivant and Dr. Jones and Ms. Gray contributing $250 each to the Teacher Appreciation Dance. Ms. Gray also would like to set aside $3,000 for students to participate in robotics. And Ms. Taylor has requested $60 to attend an event that Dr. Bedden is speaking at in March, and $1,500 for her newsletter. Just need a
Just consensus.
consensus.
Okay. All right, thank you.
The next item is 4.09, receive for action budget transfer request.
Do we have those requests?
They were placed on board docs, I believe, earlier today. I have a copy if someone needs to see them. I think they're on board docs.
I move we pass that by to the next meeting, Mr. Coleman.
I believe there was something on here that needed approval.
Budget
The
transfers.
budget transfers, is there something?
Well,
To the extent that we need information to review, they're not on board docs, so.
Speaking of budget transfer,
yes.
there were three of them now related to special education of moving money from select accounts to pay for professional services for therapy. And that was the sum total of the three of them, to pay for tuition for private carriers, transportation as well. All three of them related to special education services.
Okay. I move that we approve the 3 requests for budget transfers in the special education department.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne? Ms. Taylor?
Budget transfer.
Yes.
Ms. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Pinkney Epps?
Yes.
And Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes 8-0. You did move your minutes down. I just request that the minutes of December 8th be approved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Again, colleagues, we had a request from Mrs. Muhammad. Ms. Muhammad, you want to restate
Yes,
your
my
request?
request again, colleagues, is to, I am respectfully and almost at a point of begging that we put a halt on this full implementation of reconstitution at Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School until we can get, as a board, the process, whatever the identified process is, explained to us. I am in no way saying that changes need to be halted at MLK, but what I'm saying is, as the representative and whom have met with the staff and spoken with the assistant principals there, I am not convinced that they understand the process. And I am asking if we can halt the process until we can get a presentation as a board on what the process includes completely. The teachers have asked for certain things, they haven't received it. So I am asking if we can slow this down until now, and I want to say this, we may slow it down if you all can stand with me in slowing it down. But the teachers the staff there need to understand that after we have moved and got a full understanding that the implementations may remain the same. However, I am fighting for the fact that they need to be able to hear and understand, to be able to read on paper a clear process of what they are going through right now. And it is not, I am totally convinced in my spirit, they don't know. They do not understand. They have no idea.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Bourne.
And I could be wrong in my interpretation. It's late. I'm tired, frustrated tonight. But one of the things that I would hope we all would agree on is that the lack of progress and the declining performance at all of our schools generally. But we have some acute problems, MLK, Henderson, Thompson, necessitate that we not delay any longer. And while I certainly appreciate the fact that we need to do everything we can to make sure that we're communicating as a board, as a cabinet level administration to the folks in schools that are affected by this, I would request that we, rather than stop the progress, we as a board direct the administration to develop either a frequently asked questions about the process or lay out in writing, here are the steps you need to take if you are going to be affected, here are the content areas that are going to be affected, here's the plan, whatever that packet of information is so that folks can know. Give them a week, 2 weeks to digest it, then go back and have another meeting with the staff to answer any further questions. But I think the stopping the progress is, to me, would only be more harmful and confusing than doing something like directing our superintendent and cabinet to answer the questions and provide something in writing, provide the plan in writing, so that there's never any confusion about what was said, what wasn't said, what was provided, and what wasn't provided.
Okay. All right. At this point, requests have been made. I'm just looking for, is there any consensus for this or not?
Question. I didn't put my pencil on it.
Go ahead.
Well, more of a statement. I'd like for us to consider that if we are going to direct the administration to take this follow-up action with the teachers and the staff at MLK as a point of clarification as they continue through this process, that same opportunity be afforded to the parents at Elkhart to know what that process, to have an understanding of the process to understand how they will be impacted by the closing of that school. I previously made a request that we maybe even consider extending open enrollment, and even if we don't do that, to direct the administration in the same vein that we're offering clarity to MLK, to offer clarity to those parents at Elkhart about open enrollment. Because had it not been for the incident, they were just assuming their children were going back into Elkhart in September. And more likely than not, that's not going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Bourne.
I would just say that I think any direction or follow-up or clarification to the parents at Elkhart is maybe a little premature right now because we have a decision to make on what happens, whether or not we reject what I heard as a recommendation, and I think you guys had gone the other night, whether or not we fix Elkhart or whether we do something different. So I don't know, I'm not sure what we can tell the Elkhart parents that we don't already know now until we make a decision as a board on what the future of Elkhart as a school in Richmond is.
We do know that building is closed.
Well, we know that right now, but I think the question for us is, do we spend $15 to $20 million to fix it, or do we close it and rezone those students, or what? That's the decision point we have. And I'm not sure that, I don't think anyone. Okay. I mean, we know it's closed for the rest of the school year, but we don't, I mean, in September, if we chose to and had $20 million, and this 5 members of the board said, let's fix Elkhart, then there's no issue. They're going back to Elkhart.
Mr. Krantz can give you all the same presentation that we gave the board. That's what he's referring to. You all left the meeting. We gave them estimated dollar amounts related to what it would cost to fix it, and just bring it up to snuff, what it would cost to build a new one. And then we also showed boundaries. So at minimum, you got those 3 options that the board and Mr. Muhammad talked about, kind of we need to get on this. not just there, but systemically was a conversation. So that's what Mr. Bourne is referring to, that we don't know what next yet until y'all tell us what next yet. So we're not sure what we will be able to tell them.
Can I ask just one question? If we fix it, is it going to be repaired by September?
No, it wouldn't, but that's all part of the whole thing. Like, okay, what are you going to do with them? We can't just send them somewhere without you all, so that's why we show boundaries and capacities also.
Okay.
That has to be a larger conversation.
And Mr. Krantz has mentioned to me that he wants to take a meeting with me. I just think time is of the essence. Do we anticipate we'll be having this conversation fairly soon?
Well, at the close of that presentation, I did highlight a priority, that was what Mr. Moore's talking about, that the board needs to have a specific conversation about that one, because it's looming. To answer your question, I think I'm doing this from memory. It was like at least 2 years worth of work, no matter what we did at minimum. But there was a conversation about that needs to be a priority. And then the other pieces that we talked about need to be addressed in our district.
Okay.
Because we have the south side he presented that's going to burst at the seams also. You got to see the presentation.
Mr. Chair.
Can we get back on track? Because
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
It is approaching 10 o'clock. I've had my hand up for quite a while, and I'm trying to be patient here. But if people choose to leave a meeting and not see the presentation, it is not unfair.
Point of order.
It is unfair
You were
for me
making a
to have to
decision
sit
about
there.
why we left that meeting.
It is unfair to have
We didn't just
everyone
walk
else
out
have
of
to
the meeting.
reverberate the entire discussion.
All right, I'm going to pull us back
That's
here.
very
It's on video, and
Do we have
it's on board
consensus?
docs.
Thank you, Ms. Grant.
Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any consensus?
I still have my hand up, and I
Okay.
would hope to have an opportunity to make a comment towards Ms.
Thank
Mohammed.
you. That's what I thought you were going to do.
Well, I think that I have a right to speak to whatever issue I choose at this
That's right.
point. And I will do so. I will take my privilege. And I cannot support handing a directive down, because I think the directive we gave the superintendent and his team was to fix our middle school problems. And I think that anything short of full support behind the plans that they put forward can undermine the progress that we intend to make. So I'm fully in support of reconstituting before the state has to come in and make decisions for us. I think we need to make some proactive choices. I'm all about getting information out and being transparent, so I support getting the information to those people if that's what you're asking for. But I do not believe it is appropriate for us to give any additional directives beyond the level of the board. Let's fix this middle school issue. And they brought us the plan, and I approve what they're doing. So I can't support any additional directives at this point.
The concern, I'm sorry.
Ms. Mohammed,
Thank you.
at this point, we're at the point where we just need to see.
Okay, and that's fine, but we did not as a board receive it. So, I mean, we're not even clear on what's going on. The teachers are not clear on what's going on. So I hear the consensus of the board, but again, we have failed those people at that school. Some of those teachers at that school, we have just failed them because they are not clear on what's happening to them. We're talking about people who were moved in that building in December, who were promised one thing. They were asked to go there. They were told they were going there. They didn't have an option. They went.
Okay.
So now they're like thrown out there again. But I got it. I get it. It doesn't work for my people. It works for everybody else. I'm good. So I'm fine, Mr. Coleman. I'm fine.
Let me take a point of privilege. Let me take a point of privilege. Let me take a point. Me and you met today, Ms. Mohammed.
We did meet, and it's not still stands with him. It's
Okay.
not fair how they've been treated.
Okay, and we came to a conclusion of how we could address that. We can address that by sitting down and having a conversation.
I don't trust the process.
Okay,
And that
thank
has
you.
to be clear. I don't
Thank you
trust
very
it.
much.
The way they have been treated is
Ms.
wrong.
Mohammed, I'm
good,
asking,
Mr.
thank
Coleman.
you.
I'm not going to be disrespectful because
Thank
that's
you.
not who I am. But
Thank
it's
you.
wrong.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk.
The next item is item 5, other informational items. I believe you received this in a report on Friday, and it's also posted to the board docs. It is the human resources audit. And then,
This is for informational purposes. We will bring it back for a presentation at a following meeting.
And the next item is item 6, your closed session.
We do have a couple of items for close. We can move swiftly. They shouldn't take that long.
Second.